at least for me, where I'm very interested and wanted to bring you on. A couple reasons, but I think one of them was really regarding like your connection to like these angelic beings. And I think the two things I really hear you talk about a lot are archangels and the love. I know you dive into some other astrology type stuff, but like those are the two words I've seen a lot, like all over your YouTube, how you describe yourself, your Instagram. So diving into those, starting off kind of strong, I guess, is what is love? How do you describe
Oh my gosh, that's the best question ever.
it?
Um, so I'm gonna start off really simply and say love is God. As I've worked with the angels on my spiritual path over the years, they are beings of absolute pure love. So I've learned a lot about love in working with them. And what they communicate and what I've learned is that love is our true essence. It's like the original source state of consciousness. It's the highest state that consciousness can go into, and it is our source. So
Mm.
I like to say that love is God. Love is the true nature of our soul. So it's one of the most important things I think that can help us navigate life.
Yeah, it's a question that I really want to get your opinion on to dive even deeper because I like your answer. And in my life where this word was my hiccup, this word was really my breakthrough into the spirituality community. And I'll save you the details of the story. I can tell you later, but I've shared it so many times on the podcast. But my mind was very fixated, if you will, or confused on love because we talk about love in so many different facets. I love my podcast. I love my friends. I love jujitsu. I love my significant other. And there's a piece of me whenever I get into my analytical brain that feels like there's different kinds of love. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that love actually is quite universal. It's just that we can experience it perhaps at different amplitudes and apply it towards different things. And so it can become anything, So, like, I love my podcast. Like, that's something that is expanding this energy of love, right? It's a way of experiencing creation and all of the joy and expansion that comes from it. Um, but I would say that actually, while we can say that, okay, yes, there's romantic love, there's like love for a thing, there's like love for your friend, and those are all like they look a little bit different. I really kind of feel that love is so universal. It is the one thing that I think unites all of us. Like when in spirituality you hear sayings like we are all one. What is the thing that binds us? To me, it really is this thing that we as human beings refer to as love. And I think instinctually when we say, I love this, I love you, I love that, what we're really referring to is I am recognizing divine truth through this experience. I'm recognizing that I am expanding the soul, I'm expanding consciousness itself through this experience. And love is a unifying force, so it's like I'm merging into union with something in this state of love. And I think that you kind of see across the board throughout all the different like types of love that there are. So I think there are universals in it for sure.
That's an interesting way to break it down, and I really like it, where it's different ways of experiencing, or it feels like almost like this appreciation for all of these unique experiences.
Yeah, I think that appreciation um, is a big part of it. And of course, there are so many other amazing emotions that we can associate with love. And I always like to say that love is not necessarily like an emotion, but there are emotions tied to it. So, yes, appreciation, gratitude, joy, I mean, there's so many things. You could feel relief, you could feel comfort, you could feel nourishment, because it's just this state of being that again creates this opportunity for us to expand, to merge. It's like the oxygen that we breathe. It's if it is our source and it is our essence, then you kinda have to you kinda have to relate with it all the time. You're breathing it all the time, you're looking for it all the time, you're reaching for it in almost everything that you want and do.
That's interesting. So you said though in that response that you don't see love as an emotion, but it's something that has emotions within it. Is that a fair way?
Yes.
Can you expand on that
Yes.
a little bit?
Yeah, yeah. So I would say that perhaps if I'm visualizing it in my head, that when we're in a state of love, we can almost imagine that state of love as sort of like a container, and that it's a container where a lot of emotion, can flow, sort of like if love were the canvas and the emotions could be like the paint that you put on the canvas, and there can be so many different combinations of emotion that you place around that experience of love. But yeah, I think that love is just it's so much bigger than just an emotion. It seems to be again, just from my perspective, like the actual essence and content of the soul. It's what the soul is made of. So when we are recognizing love outside of us or feeling it moving through us, it is, I'm in contact with my soul. I'm in contact with the God stuff inside of me.
So it's almost a meta expression, and then other emotions live within it. And so even going back to what I introduced this with, it would be almost like I love anger, I love hate, I love fear, I love bliss, I love joy. So is it okay to say that we love anger or love hate?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. In I guess in putting that through my mind and thinking about it a little bit more, I wonder who has that experience, and I wonder what it would be like to say, "I love anger. I love being in a state of anger," because I'm not sure that it exists. Maybe it exists, maybe it doesn't, I don't know. Um, but I always like to think of love as sort of like a divine compass. So when we are feeling the absence of it, it seems like, or a seeming separation from it, then it seems like that's when we have feelings like anger or hate or grief or sadness, which can be connected to an experience of love. So if you love someone and you lose them, you can feel sadness because you love, and that can be wrapped up in that.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I'd be curious, I think, to learn more about, if maybe someone has that experience of like, I love anger, and to learn more about what that would feel like and what that would look like. Because again, I guess I am a big believer that love is the compass that's leading you into God. It's leading you into an experience where you're always going to be merging with truth. You're merging with something that is important or meaningful, or that is expanding your purpose, or that is driving you into a state of harmony. Um, and so it usually has the gift of guiding us in that way.
Yeah, it's bringing up in me a piece of my history, and I think this is probably something that a lot of guys go through, or they're at least at some stage in their evolution in regards to our dating scene in the world. And my trajectory was being the nice guy in high school, then college, trying to figure out what was going on. I kind of went into finding some like I don't know how you would describe it. Kind of like red pill forums or black pill form, not black pill. I never really got into that, but red pill and more of this, let's say, less enlightened state. It was weird because it was a little bit more enlightened than being the nice guy, but it was less enlightened than the optimal. And one of the things in this, so this is like where I would say this is like the bridge of consciousness where kind of like the fuck boys live or the playboys or whatnot. But there was an interesting comment in there that, or like saying that always stuck with me, which was hate is not the opposite of love. I think apathy is the opposite of love, of just like the absence of caring. And and the way this manifested was guys in this forum kind of saying that it was almost better for there's more of an energetic charge if somebody hates you, if in this case a girl, if a girl hates you versus has no feelings for you. And so it was almost coming from this piece of like when you're the nice guy, and whenever I say nice guy, I'm meaning you're doing nice things with hopes that there is sex in return. So when you're this nice guy, you usually will attract girls in a form of apathy. So they don't really have an emotionally energetic charge towards you. But then when you take this step up into, fuckboy, playboy paradigm, it becomes this duality of like you create very polarizing attractions. So no one just feels apathetic towards you. It's like you either love this person or you like hate them, and both of them are a strong energetic charge. And so that's sort of what I'm feeling called to kind of like share with you. And I'm interested how you would break this down from your perspective in regards to this like I love hate thing that we're diving into here.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think that in that context, like if we're looking at, relationships and dating, dating is a journey where there's so much self-discovery involved in it. There's a lot of like, I'm focusing the camera lens and figuring out who I am and what my values are, and therefore who do I align with and who aligns with those values? How do I find compatibility and that kind of thing? Um, and as you're going through that experience, I think the relationships that people have really help with all of those lessons. And so there is an experience, I think, when we're dating where it's about that, the attachments that we make with someone else, whether or not we're attracted to someone, the focus seems to be more connected to that than it is always to deep love, like simple, pure, true, real, we could say love. Um, I think love is very, very clear. It's very pure and it's very true in that it doesn't have a lot of things attached around it, especially if maybe we're looking at it from a lens where we're kind of trying to maybe glimpse it from like a higher spiritual perspective or something like that. It's not sort of like, okay, love, and now all of these requirements and conditions that I'm attaching to it, and now I'm assigning that to you. I think of love kind of in this sort of like maybe if we want to if we do want to categorize love, because I think that can be useful sometimes, and we're thinking divine love, then it's not necessarily cluttered up with a lot of conditions like that. So I think when we look at like the idea of love or hate or feeling strongly or not strongly, apathy, that kind of thing, when we're thinking of like human relationships, particularly around dating, that this is more about attachment. And that gets interesting because in that case, we want to kind of dig deeper and ask, what is it that makes someone want to create an attachment to another person that's so strong, whether it's they're saying, "I love this person, I like this person," or whether it's, "I hate this person, I can't stand this person." What is underneath that attachment, that strong attachment? Well, there's usually probably a lot of judgments that are involved in that, and all of those judgments are going to be based on this journey that that person is on, where they're refocusing the camera lens and they're trying to figure out, "Who am I? What do I need? What do I want? What do I really value?" kind of thing. Um, I would actually say that the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love isn't even apathy. I think of love as the one force that we can wrap our head around and know that it is without an opposite. I think of love as the unconditioned, eternal source of creation. It is the source of all of the universe, and it is the substance that is animating all of consciousness and all of the universe. So really, we may not know it, but we all love each other deep down. And sometimes when we think of like spiritual growth or spiritual enlightenment, we think of getting to this spiritual level of love that people talk about where there's like this sense of like brotherly love or like love for all kind of thing. And really, I think we're just realizing love that's already there because we belong to one another. We are one another. You are a piece of me and I'm a piece of you. So Of course I love you. We have that. We just don't always notice it, I think, because our mind has different things that it's focusing on depending on what our priority is, you know?
Yeah, so we've only been talking to each other, I think, for like 12 minutes at this point. So is it weird if we say that, like, I love you? Are we able to do that at this point?
I don't think so.
Well, how do we bridge that gap, right? Because, like, there's still I mean, I guess I'd be comfortable at this point just because of the conversation we've had, but, like, you go up to a stranger on the street and, like, you tell them that you love them, or even if you're talking about romantic partnership, there are
Yeah.
so many times where it's like, "Oh, I don't wanna be the first one to say I love you," and, like, that's gonna give them the power, or, like, you know what I mean? And so, what is there a hiccup there? Like, what's our hold up whenever it comes to saying I love you?
Yeah. You know, I think one of the most important things to know about the healing part of being on the human journey or, you know, on a spiritual path, but really healing's for everybody. We're all healing something, is that I think most of us come into this life and into this world, and at some point or another, we have an experience that makes it feel like we are being cut off from love. So, if we're saying that God is love, right? And that a soul incarnates into their human life straight from God, straight off the boat from heaven, then when you come into this world, you are looking for the familiarity of your true nature. And I think in the best optimal situations, you have it. You know, your parents are like the first proxy for God on the planet that you experience, on this planet that you experience, in that, you know, hopefully you get to experience that they love you unconditionally. But of course, they're human. So there's going to be moments where, because they've, you know, probably experienced this wound that we all kind of like universal wound of, I feel separate from love, I feel separate from one another or from God, that it doesn't always feel safe to open up our heart, to be vulnerable, and to share the raw need to connect and the raw, pure connection that is an exchange of love between two people. What I find really remarkable, by the way, kind of thinking about childhood and that sort of thing, is that when you spend a lot of time around children, and I actually, before I did spiritual teaching, I was a nanny for several years, put myself through college that way, you know, like spent a lot of time around little children, and they love so automatically and naturally. Just all of them. I mean, across the board, we've all got different personalities when we come into this world, certainly, but the willingness and that just how naturally it comes to just be in a state of love with another human being when you're little is amazing. I think that that's our true nature, and that we have experiences down the road, you know, as we grow, as we evolve, develop, experience more of the world, where we experience pain, where we're hurt, where we feel what it's like to be, you know, emotionally abandoned or to be judged or to be rejected. And the funny thing is that all of those things, from my perspective, I mean, they seem like they arise from being in a state where love is absent, where you are convinced of the illusion of separation. You're convinced love is absent, love is not here for me. And so I do not want to merge into oneness or into connection with another person. I want to defend myself. And so we put these walls up around our hearts. We put these walls up around our mind, you know, when it comes to connection. And we'll only, you know, start to take them down when we feel like it's safe. Um, and I think that that's what we're here to heal. I think universally, like as human beings, we're here to learn about healing that and coming back home to love.
So then, if we because I see what you're saying in regards to, like, the times where we are suffering the most, there's the least amount of love. How is it then, do you think, that we make this mental connection that it's love's fault that we suffer, right? Because you're kinda saying here that, okay, well, you know, we put up these walls around our heart or around or cutting off love, because of the fact that we've suffered. Someone's done me wrong. And yet, in those moments, the main reason they probably happen is because of a lack of love. So, why internally would we make this decision to cut ourselves off from the source that prevented us from suffering in the first place?
Yes. Oh my gosh. The ego, which I think we could just very simply define as like the identity in us that is very much shaped by this illusion of separation, this experience, this temporary experience of separation, which is also, by the way, intrinsically connected to fear. You know, if you can be separate, you can be a separate self, then you can fear. I think that the ego's default state is one where it is constantly trying to reassert its separateness and stay in control, almost like white knuckle gripping and grasping onto control, because there is, again, this sort of like lack of love. So if there's a lack of love, then there's a lack of trust. And there's this sense of like, okay, I have to keep myself safe. So in order to do so, I'm going to defend or attack. It's like ego has two modes that it goes into. It's defense mode or attack mode. And a lot of times, whether it's defense or attack, actually you're doing both things at once. And the Course in Miracles talks about this a little bit, which I really like, where they say, you know, when you defend yourself, you're attacking, you know, maybe you're a unity with source, or you're attacking
Mm,
your higher consciousness. I'm paraphrasing. But really, you know, if you think about it, yeah, like you are already suffering from the illusion of a lack of love if you're in this place that says, well, love is going to make me hurt. No, really, love isn't going to make you hurt. It is the fear that love will be taken away that is hurt. So it's like, I'm afraid of opening up my heart and loving another person because what if they walk away from me? What if they reject me? What if they judge me? What if they leave me?
mm.
And I'm actually fearing love being taken away. And if I'm fearing that, it's because I probably experienced it to some degree at a point in my life when my heart was wide open and just pure, unadulterated love.
And it seems like in that answer too, what you're illustrating, or at least how I interpret it, is that you open yourself up to love, you make now that mental connection between it being in the physical world. Like, if I connect love to Sarah and then you decide to betray me, now I make the mental assertion that it was love's fault. It's not that
Yeah.
it's like it's interesting because you make this connection to the physical world and then retract it back into yourself, as opposed to just saying that it's like this emanating source that, in your words, permeates the entire universe.
Yeah.
Therefore, you can create it within yourself. And so you don't, it's not like the fault of love. It's just this other person. Maybe there's, I don't know, other stuff going on with them. That can be a very difficult thing to break apart. But it's interesting because it's almost that attachment that you make with love. Like, you almost like directionally place it towards one person or one thing and give that your power of love. It's like bestowing your power of love into someone else as opposed to realizing that you created it in the first place.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's so true. First off, I love what you said because it's true that I think we're all victims of victims, or it's hurt people that hurt other people. You have to have been hurt to be capable of hurting another person. I don't think any of that is done, you know, kind of like unconsciously by accident sort of thing. Um, and secondly, yeah, you know, if we're thinking about love, we want to have an abundance of it flowing from all different sources. I'm a big teacher, big proponent of self-love, and I think that's what helps us to get in love with that compass that I sort of mentioned, where it's like love can be your direction, it can be your guide kind of thing. Um, you have to start with self-love, and I think in that way that if you experience, you know, someone's hurt, you know, so they're pulling back, or they're abandoning, or they're harming another person, um, then you'll know that your love has not been taken away.
Mhm.
You still have self-love. It still may hurt, right? But you still have self-love there. And then hopefully, of course, maybe you've built in other types of relationships where there is love that's able to flow through different types of expressions and containers as well. And as human beings, I mean, the relationship side of it is so important, and I'm glad we're talking about that part of it, with regards to love, because yes, we have it from within, we can have self-love. I think the divine presence of God is inside of us, so divine love is inside of us too. But we're designed as human beings for connection, for human to human connection. We so again belong to one another. So looking at relationships and working on expanding love the best that we can through relationships, I think that's one of the great lessons of the human journey.
Oh, 100%. I mean, at the end of the day, we're social creatures, and it's the relation aspect is super, super valuable. And you even were mentioning there that we need to start with the relation of love to ourselves. So let's start there. So how do we cultivate self-love? How do I know if I'm in a state of actually loving myself? If I'm not, what can I do to start loving myself?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I love this question because this is like definitely really like taking me into my own spiritual journey, because I got into spiritual healing, spirituality, because I was really suffering, and what was there at the core of that was a massive lack of self-love. There was self-criticism, self-judgment, self-blame, self-hate. And I was also experiencing a lot of anxiety, depression, panic attacks, you name it, all of it, and really for me, after, doing work on myself, I really realized, yeah, the root of it, it's a lack of self-love, that I was experiencing underneath all of these things. So I came from a place of like having really, really broken and distorted, lack of self love, and then needing to rebuild it. So if I'm answering the question from like a first person narrative, type of perspective, I would say what I did and what I guide a lot of people also to do if they can is to start to develop mindfulness and awareness first of where you are on the emotional spectrum. Hold awareness of like, how do I really feel in this moment? Is there discomfort, or is there comfort and, enjoyment and all the empowerment or whatever that I want? If you have all that you want in your spectrum of emotion, then great, keep going. There's probably self-love in there. You're probably experiencing something
No
great.
change needed.
Yeah, yeah. But if there's discomfort, if there's pain, if there's worry, if there's anxiety, I think doing a little bit of self-inquiry can be really helpful, in that we can start to ask questions of those feelings and say, where do you come from feeling? And what are your assumptions feeling? What are the beliefs underneath this feeling? And where did I learn to believe or see that way? When I was doing a lot of that on my own path of healing, I would find that underneath a lot of the uncomfortable feelings, there was this self rejection, this self hate, self abuse type of thinking. So, what I learned to do was say, okay, I know my marching orders. I'm going to love myself, forgive myself for all of these assumptions and judgments that I've made against myself, and do that through not just words, although the words were essential and crucial to me. Oh my gosh, words must be one of my love languages, because I needed to say that to myself like a broken record over and over and over again. So anytime I had a negative or painful thought, or the anxiety started to really ramp up or something like that, I would pause, I would breathe, I would visualize that I was taking that negative emotion, all the negative thoughts connected to it, and that I was handing it over to my angels, and that they were helping to clear it, take it away, put it back into pure source energy, so transmute it. And then I would affirm, I love myself. I forgive myself. I forgive and release this negative thought, whatever else I needed to affirm, given the specifics of that particular thought. But I would come back to anchoring, I love myself. And with that thinking, that believing, and that wording first for me, that planted a seed that empowered me to have the awareness to start putting that love into actions and choices, and put it into the relationship patterns that I was choosing and co-creating, and really again start to apply it to all these other areas of life. So I think love should be our compass starting with self-love being the compass for how we live our lives, and that it is something that we can always, always trust to take us in the right direction.
I love that. It's a very beautiful process that you have there. And what I'm feeling called to ask is that it hinges on knowing what love feels like. So, what do we do if we don't know what love feels like? How are we able to get in touch with it? Is there a way that we can feel it? Is it just saying the word until universe tells us? How do we get aligned with knowing what love feels like?
I love that question. Oh my gosh, I feel like that is a God-sent question because I know that there are people that feel that way. You
It
know,
was me for
I've
a long time.
Yes, yes, yeah, we can get so, cut off or wounded that it feels like, I don't know what love is. I don't know if I could point it out and recognize it if I saw it in the world around me. So in those cases, I like to remember a couple of different things. Um, the first thing, and this I think can help someone. It might take a little bit of time to believe it, but there are ways to get at this. First, remember that love is inside of you already. You're going to be able to unpack it. You're going to be able to find it. You're going to be able to get at it. Again, hard to believe if you're not there and if you're really suffering. But most of us have had some experience or another that involves some measure of comfort to it. So even if it's something as simple and everyday as the feeling when I pull the covers over myself in bed and I feel warm and it's silent and it's quiet and there's a moment of comfort. Or maybe for another person, it's like taking the first bite of my favorite food or something like that. And I feel comfort. I feel pleasure. There's something that I'm uniting with, I'm merging with in my human experience. And again, it could be something as simple as something sensory in the body, something as simple that as something that I like, like I'm just liking it a little bit. I'm feeling a little bit of ease, a little bit of comfort, a little bit of pleasure here. Lean into that, look for that feeling, and start to train your consciousness, I guess if we're thinking mindfulness wise, right? To notice more of those things. And even if it only happens like once a day, notice it and put your energy towards it and follow that feeling. Become very present in that feeling, breathe in that feeling, and I guarantee that that actually can start to expand the feeling. Because if you're bringing more of your awareness and your presence into that moment where you're taking your first bite of pasta that you love and that's the one comfort feeling or that you can identify, right? Um, you'll be able to expand the feeling through that moment of now all of my presence is anchored into the here and now, and I'm really, really here. I'm really feeling that. And then you might start to notice yourself waking up to that feeling in other places. So it can start very, very slowly at first, where it's like, wow, now I'm noticing that the smell of nature around me, walking outside is beautiful, like the smell of these trees and the ground. Oh, that feels really good too. There is liking, there is pleasure, there is I want to merge into union with this because I'm drawn in. And I think that that can start to cultivate the memory of love even when we feel like we've lost it or that all of the suffering has cut off our connection to it, has created like an amnesia to love. We can expand it by looking for it and just helping it grow through the very simplest of things.
Yeah, simple things. Finding that peace in simple things. One word you used in there was comfort or finding comfort in these simple things. And now I'm curious because my mindset, especially my masculine doing mindset, is to seek discomfort. My goal is that if I am just being comfortable, then I'm not growing, that I'm not progressing in life. So, in regards to this, where does this balance or this catch 22 lie in regards to love being associated with comfort? But all the greats tell me that I need to do uncomfortable things and get out of my comfort zone in order to grow.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I actually love that you brought that forward. I think that that's amazing because tough love is a thing. And sometimes, part of self-love can be like, get up off the couch, go for a walk, go to the gym, eat healthfully, do these things that genuinely mean you're caring for yourself and you are expanding the things that you want to be. So yeah, I think that there can sometimes be a little bit of discomfort in love as well, but I think the key word that you said was perfect, and it was balance. That we want to have a balance between both, because anytime we're overly focused on maybe one end of the spectrum, um, we can start to get thrown off a little bit, and I think it can, in some ways, maybe have us lose touch with that self-love piece. So let's say, like, the person that's maybe over disciplining themselves. I've definitely been there. There is a point where it's like, "Oh my gosh, I want this work, as a spiritual healer and teacher so much that I'm just gonna work around the clock. I'm just gonna push myself so hard all the time and, not have a balanced life," right? And you could apply that towards anything, but you start to do that, and eventually the thing about self-discipline and, pushing yourself and working hard, which is wonderful, and we want that and we need that, is that in a way, we're actually cutting off awareness to certain feelings that we have inside of us. Sometimes we want to do that. Sometimes it's our ego saying, "But I'd rather be lazy on the couch," right? And so you have to not pay attention to that feeling, cut off connection to that feeling, and then put that discipline in, towards the greater goal, and push yourself in that act of hard work. If you do that too much, you're going to cut yourself off from all of your feelings. You're going to cut off your self-awareness. You're going to cut off knowledge, therefore, of what you really need, of your deeper emotional, physical needs, your human needs in general. And you might start to get to a place where it's like, okay, this isn't self-love anymore. This is starting to take me into a place where I'm denying too many of my needs. I'm pushing myself too hard. And at that point, we have to ask ourselves, okay, where is the motivation coming from to push me in this direction? Because I think, like, 10 times out of 10, there's fear underneath that. If we're pushing ourselves too far in one direction or another, whether it's I'm procrastinating and I'm sitting on the couch and I'm not doing, and I'm just reaching for the dopamine hit, the comfort, the creature comfort things. It's usually fear. There's fear of failure, fear of success, fear of, am I worthy? Am I good enough? Can I do this? Right. And if you're way on the other side of the spectrum, you're pushing yourself and forcing yourself and going way too hard, not balancing your life, there's likely fear underneath that too. And usually
Mm.
it's the same type of fear. It's just expressing itself on the other end of the spectrum. So it's fear of, I'm overcompensating because I'm afraid that I'm not good enough. I'm afraid of success, afraid of failure, afraid of all of the things connected to me doing the thing, being the thing that I want to expand and create. So self love, the more we really master it and work at it and devote ourselves to it like it's our number one priority and focus, I think that it has a natural intelligence with it that will help us to balance ourselves. So we'll say, out of self love, yes, I'm getting up and I'm going to the gym and I'm doing that every morning because I know that that's what I need. But then we have our moments of balance where it's like, okay, I know when I need to stop. I know when I need to rest. I know when I need to embrace comfort and therefore open up in touchness with certain parts of my emotional spectrum to where I really know and understand myself and can then strengthen myself. Strength is complete when we have both sides, in my opinion. Yeah.
That answer makes me feel like it's very intuitive in regards to what you need more of. If it's more discomfort, if it's less discomfort, if it's more ease or more struggle, it sounds like it's something we need to come to from an intuitive place, or something that we need to feel into. And maybe, I mean, I'd be interested to know this. As people are listening to you talk, they may just intuitively know which side of that spectrum they lie on and which one they need to shift closer to.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's totally intuitive. And I think another good thing to note as well when we're thinking about that is like sometimes people lose touch with that intuitive knowing of which side they need to be on, especially like if in my case, I went from way over procrastinating to way overworking. So it's like the procrastinator, all the way to like the workaholic. So I didn't trust myself. I'm like, I don't know what I need. I don't know if I can trust what I want to do in this moment. So it actually took me a few years really to recover
Mm,
from like the overworking part of it because I was so accustomed to saying, Sarah, if you give in to the part of you that wants to rest or that wants to go slower towards this particular goal, then you're just going to fall back in touch with that procrastinator side. And you don't want that. That's not going to feel good. So I would always
mm.
listen to the side that, fear side, right? That was like, keep working, keep forcing, keep pushing, keep doing, until eventually I think with all things, if you get yourself into trouble by harming yourself in any way, doing something that's going to take you off balance in any way, it's eventually going to hurt enough to where you'll wake up. Pain, there's a fail safe in pain, and that it eventually wakes us up and realizes, okay, there's something not working here. So I would work myself to the bone to the point of like burnout, and then I realized this is burnout, and like I wanted to teach people to heal themselves. So I luckily have the benefit of like preaching and working on this stuff all the time with the people that I talk to, the people that I work with all the time. So at the time when I was really struggling with this, it was like, oh, I'm giving myself advice. Sometimes when I'm talking to people,
Yeah.
I'm learning as I'm teaching, I'm learning as I'm going. So um eventually the pain of it will wake you up and you can start to play with pulling it back a little bit and feeling what it's like to go towards the other side of the spectrum and draw in qualities of both. So it's like I want to do a little bit of both, and I know that that's how I'm going to feel the best. And we can each, I think, individually, intuitively find our own balance that way, even if it's imperfect at first.
Right. And this is think I'm being reminded right now of my journey in regards to like health and wellness, where I used to be very rigid, very disciplined with my diet, with my workouts, and then I'd look great. And then this fear would creep in that if I backslide at all, if I take one day off, that I'm gonna become overweight again. And I can see now looking back on it how there were these huge fluctuations in my weight because of it. However, now what I've shifted into is I think I went 72 days of working out straight, and then I could tell that there was a fear creeping in. There was a many reasons that I stopped, but a fear creeping in of if I take a day off, then I'm gonna backslide and everything's gonna go away. And I'm hearing it as a parallel in regards to what you're saying with I need to work super hard, and if I procrastinate at all, then I'm gonna fail. It's gonna be terrible. And I think the key element there is fear. And what I'm thinking, and this ties back to what we were talking about earlier, maybe fear is the opposite of love. Maybe it's fear that we need to confront in a loving way. It's like, okay, you're afraid that if you take this day off, XYZ is going to happen. But I've learned so many times that you need to do what you fear most. So maybe I should just push into this and see what happens. And and I think that the understanding that's unvol or evolved from that is tapping into the subtler energies that we're experiencing in every single moment. So I'm curious, what do you think about this new idea that maybe fear is the opposite of love?
Yes, I think that first off, that rings with a lot of truth. In fact, that's what I always for many years said was the opposite of love. I said, yeah, fear is the opposite of love. Fear is totally the opposite of love. And I would still say that
Well,
there's
let me
there's a
let me
lot of
correct myself real quick. It's not a new idea. I'm there's no such thing as a
yeah.
new idea. I was thinking about that right after I said that. That was gonna eat at me for a bit. So sorry,
Yeah.
go ahead with what
In
you
the
were saying.
context of this conversation, it's a new thing that we're putting yes,
All right,
yes.
thanks. Thanks for
Um
saving me there.
but yeah, like I would say like yeah, like fear is totally the opposite of love. So when I was working on my own spiritual healing and then later, helping people with their healing as well, it was always about like, okay, we want to look to identify fear because we want to heal that. That's the opposite of love. And if we can heal the fear, then we're going to bring the love in. I still do all of that with the people that I work with and think that that is incredibly, incredibly valuable. And I do believe that if we're looking at this from a very human, earthly lens, then totally yes, fear is the opposite of love, because we as human beings live in a dualistic world. We experience everything in the context of dualities and polarities. You know, we're that's how our whole consciousness is designed. You know, we're going to experience day and night, hot and cold, and all of these different things that help us to have our sense of self, our sense of consciousness. So for the sake of having a very useful model of how to explore that concept, yes, I would say in this human lifetime, human context, fear would be our opposite of love. If you exit outside of your human body and your human lifetime, or you're looking at it more from like that angelic perspective, what our angels would tell us is love is God and love has no opposite, because there is, beyond this human dimension of thinking, which is very dualistic, there is something non-dual that does exist. There is something that exists that is absolutely changeless, unconditioned, eternal truth. And that's love. But when we bring that into this dimension, this realm, I think, yeah, of course, we experience everything in the spectrum of duality. So totally right. I would say fear would be our opposite of love.
Well, then, do you think there could be a different word for it as opposed to love? Because I'm all on board with the idea of, this is a dual nature, yin yang, masculine, feminine. That's the, energies. That's the world we live in. So if we take this higher perspective of, well, at the top of it, we are the combination of the yin yang. We're not black or white. We're both. We're all of it in combination. So then extrapolating this idea, and I know English is a muddied language at this point. We've talked about it before on the
Yeah.
podcast. I guess we're talking about this in terms of there's a oneness love and then there's a dualistic love. Is there a word, do you think, that could better describe one or the other?
You know, I might put the word union next to love. And then in unpacking and exploring that a little bit further, we'd say, well, union really is about maybe moving into the non dual. So I think that love really is our gateway back home, back to that source of who and what we are, our gateway back to God, gateway back to truth. That it really is the thing that doesn't have any opposites, but there's so many paradoxes when you start to think of that. It's like, well, everything that we experience here has its pair of opposites, but exit outside of here, which we have the ability to think of that existing, that something outside of this exists, then you've got these divine paradoxes that start to show up. So I would still say yes, love is quite non-dual. It is union. It is that return to truth. And that fear maybe is separation. We could say, like, on one end of the spectrum you have
Mm,
union. You have the truth that has you merging into all of the harmony that sustains and creates the miracle of life. On the other end of the spectrum, you have fear and the illusion of separation, which I call it an illusion because, yeah, we experience a degree of separateness here, but there's a saying that anything that changes is not real. And so, like,
mm.
real, if we're defining real in the ultimate sense, is the only thing that stays, the only thing that is permanent, maybe that is God, that is love, that is truth. So we could say, all right, we've got this illusion of separation. In other words, a temporary experience right now of these different facets of seeming separation that we're having right here in this like dream that we call human life. So in that separateness, yeah, we could say I feel what it's like to have something opposed to love. I feel what it's like to have something other than love. Some people might even argue that that's why we incarnate into human existences in the first place. It's like it's God incarnating as billions and billions of individual forms of consciousness of all kind, and then experiencing itself by having a contrast to itself, having the illusion of a contrast to itself. Maybe.
Maybe. So do you believe in reincarnation?
Yes, I do.
Okay. What
Big
got
yes
you
to that.
there?
Yeah, I had a past life regression that was not on purpose. It was kind of very, spontaneous, and that had me completely convinced. Um, it was when I was 19 years old, I think, and, I was at a Burning Man party of all things, and there's this old man in a room, and he was giving people oracle card readings. And at this point in my life, I was, like, very interested in spirituality. You know, I'd already had my first encounter with angels before, but it wasn't something that I was, like, maybe doing every day as, like, "This is gonna be my path. This is, like, my thing." Um, but I was like, "Yeah, I'm interested in getting a reading from the guy with these, like, really cool homemade oracle cards. Like, of course I'll do that." And I was struck because one of the first things that he said was, "Oh, you've, had many past lives before where, like, either you go down this route where you are in, like, the archetype of the saint," or something, I think was the words that he said, which basically was like, you're devoted to spiritual practice or something like that, or there's something that really pulls you off that track, and there's all this suffering. And he said, for example, I see a past life where you were, like, in the early 1900s, like a Broadway type of, like, performer person, and yeah, you died of some kind of terrible, you know, thing that happened, like, during this lifetime. He was just very vague, just a couple of sentences. He's like, "But this is not the place for past life readings. That's too deep. We're, like, in the middle of this loud, crazy environment, so I'm just gonna tell you this." And then he, like, showed me the other cards. Well, like, a day later, like, when I had gotten home and I was like, "I'm gonna get, like, the first good night of sleep that I've gotten since this event that I'm at." Um, I had a spontaneous past life regression where I was in, like, the first person sort of, like, I'm watching the movie, but I'm simultaneously starring in the movie, like, vision thing as I'm falling asleep of being in this life. I saw and felt what I looked like. I saw myself dying in that time of actually a drug overdose. Um, and the feeling of all of it was so real. It was not like any dream, you know, like, when you're there and you feel it, it's like, this is not a dream, this is not like a normal psychic vision thing, this is an experience, this is a memory, I was there, this is very real. And I was absolutely convinced when I came back from that, yep, past lives are real, and I was interested in learning more about my past lives from there, so I've had, since then, many other past life regressions and opportunities to even do past life readings for other people as well, so, um, big believer in it. I mean, it's just so fascinating.
What really stuck out to me there was you were saying how he was like, "This is not the place for this, like, this darkness." And I find a strong corollary is, like, if you're at a music festival, I guess Burning Man's kind of a music festival, it's something probably completely different, but there's probably a lot of drug usage there, and so that's probably not the environment to invite in that energy, so I could certainly see how he would, like, maybe see that at some level and be like, should probably let this chick figure it out on her own. I don't wanna go
Agreed
into this one."
100%. Yes.
Yeah. So how did once you had that, let's say, memory, or you remembered that memory of this past life, how did your life change from it?
Yeah, it's really interesting. In that lifetime, one of the big lessons that I struggled with was a negative relationship where the relationship almost, like, swallowed up all my power.
And did that
And
sorry to cut you off, but did that come from that memory you had? That spontaneous memory was like, did you see your whole life and then you remembered this lesson, or like what happened?
Yeah, actually, I saw snippets of the life of that life. So this has me really believing that was a higher force kind of organizing or curating what I needed to see most from that lifetime. Maybe it was the deeper intelligence in me, maybe it was my angels and guides, maybe it was something else, but I was shown like the exact scenes of that lifetime that I needed to see to get the relevant information about the lesson. So I saw myself um, in a relationship with a man that was involved with like drugs during this lifetime. It was heroin, actually. Um, and saw the way that I got addicted to it in that past life. Saw just how abusive this person was and how little he cared for me. He was actually the one. This is trigger warning. He's the one that found my body, and I saw that scene um
Oh,
as the last scene in that lifetime was like, okay, now I've died and I'm aware that I've died and I've floated out of my body. And he's the one that came in to this little tiny studio apartment with like these boards in the walls that were like just creaky and that brought in all of the wintry air, and it was just like this
do you know what
very
time
just
period it was?
it was definitely like early 1900s. Like
Okay.
like some of the performances that I saw that I was doing, because I was like this theater type of person, which is crazy because at the time I was like going to school for opera and had done musical theater, and then this guy gives me this reading and he just knows that
No
right away. So I was
way.
like, okay, there's something to that.
Oh, wow.
Wow. But it was all very vaudeville looking, so it reminded me like sort of like 1920s flappers, but a little earlier than that, because yeah, there were just little elements that made me think I think it's a little bit earlier than this. Um, so yeah, I just saw the guy that came in, found that I had passed away, and he kind of just didn't really seem all that concerned. Like he didn't have all that much emotion, no remorse, no nothing around that. Um,
Mm.
so the lesson, kind of coming back around to that I had coming out of it was like, okay, this changed me. Having this past life regression changed me because first off, I feel like I've literally purged out the disempowerment that I held during that lifetime. Like I purged out the emotional and energetic substance of that in some way. And it gave me this brand new lens on my relationships. And I was in sort of like this on and off again romantic relationship that was not at all healthy. Had a few similarities to the one from the past life, emotionally. Not that there was like drugs and it was that bad, but it made me feel like, wow, I need to love myself enough to not choose relationships that don't honor health and my highest good. So I think that it was very meant to be to have that particular past life regression, and it was very beneficial, very, very healing.
What happened with your study or practice in the theater after that? Did you lose interest or, like, do you continue to do stuff with that?
That is so interesting because it definitely changed. My relationship with all of that definitely changed. Like previously, like in my teens, because I was only 19 at this time,
Mhm.
um, I was so into theater. Like I just wanted that to be my life. Like I wanted to be on the stage. There was just this voracious hunger to be in that life. And I felt a little differently. Like it took a little bit of time as it just sort of like that feeling kind of waned. But then I realized I don't like musicals as much as I actually thought that I did. I enjoy being in them, but I'm not even someone that likes necessarily watching them in the audience. Like, shouldn't I like them and be really passionate about them? Same with opera. I was like, there are some operas that I really love and that are really exciting, but do I love this so much that I would make all the sacrifices involved in making that your career? Maybe not, but I do love to sing and I do love art and there's other things that I love to do. So it just took a different form where it was like, I don't want that sort of like old model of like, I want to audition and be in a show and, the theater life. Instead, I want to just be independently creating art in a different way and using my voice in ways that do feel more genuine and that do speak to me. So yeah, that's an interesting question because it did totally change.
So then it sounds like that there's some sort of connection between this past life and then this current one in regards to the opera. So what effects do you think that that past life may have had on your connection to dancing, performing, being in a play in this life?
Yeah, in this life, I think it's as if there was like a part of me that was maybe just reaching back into that karmic thread, like just reaching back to discover or learn something that needed to be uncovered from that
Mm,
past life. So I was so drawn into that. And thinking about it right now, like I'm putting this together in my head as I'm saying it, but before I did theater, I always felt like the weird kid. I was like the bullied kid, like felt left out, felt rejected, learned a lot of that judgment that I put on myself, that a lot of that lack of self-love. But when I was oh gosh, how old was I the first time I was like in a theater type of thing? I was maybe like 13 or something like that, and all of a sudden, people were being nice to me and they were like, "Oh, you were so good. Oh my gosh, your voice is so pretty. Like, oh my goodness, I never knew you had that in you. Like, wow, wow." And, I was getting all this love and this validation. So making a connection between like at that time, I felt like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so drawn into this." The big theme of that past life was there was a radical lack of self-love and self-empowerment such that I gave my power away to being in this very unhealthy situation that eventually got me dead.
yeah.
So there was like this lesson in that self-love stuff really wrapped up in all of it. And I think that I probably learned the self-love lesson a little bit deeper, having released what I released from the past life regression. Um, to the point that, yeah, it changed just the way that I felt about it. It changed how drawn I was to all of that. Like, I don't need that to validate me anymore. Um, but I still love art and I'm still passionate about it, and I just wanna create it in a way that does feel authentic and genuine to me. Yeah.
It sounds like there's a connection there, right? How we were talking about like love being externalized and in the power of others versus creating that self-love within ourselves, where you were attaching that love, if you will, or at least getting you were at least getting external validation in like what you were doing, and it was
Yeah.
like filling, it was almost driving that thing that was going on inside of you.
Exactly. That was my source of love for a while. Like, I feel a deficit, a lack of love due to the imprint of feeling rejection from others, socially growing up, and due to a lack of self-love, so this is my replacement. This is what I'm filling that void with, and yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Totally right.
Wow. And so then this leads me to something I'm always curious about. How do you know that this was your past life? How do you know that you weren't just remembering somebody else's past life? Like, how do you know that it was your soul that experienced this past life?
Yeah, that's a really good question. You know, it takes me back to just the feeling of it. Um, so how I would compare or describe that is like in this life, I do a lot of readings sometimes where I'm reading into the energy of another person, or I'm empathically kind of sensing their perspective. And there's such a difference between when you're looking at someone else's story, while you can have empathy and you can feel like, okay, yeah, I could put myself in your shoes, there's still maybe a degree of difference there. And I felt like this was me. Like, it just felt like I am plugged into a piece of myself. It felt so, again, like first person, like this is my experience. So I guess that's the only thing I have to go on is just like the conviction and the emotional validation being so incredibly undeniably strong.
Yeah, that's an interesting way that you look at it because it's reminding me like if I'm sure we've told multiple stories here that people could be listening to. I know you've told stories where I'm like, "Oh, I can relate to that because XYZ. I've had that feeling before." But then there's a difference whenever there's this like deep knowing that exists. Like you look back on your day and you know that you ate what you ate for breakfast.
Yes.
Like you just know. There's nothing you could come on here, Sarah, and start yelling at me. "You did not have eggs for breakfast. I know you didn't." And I'm sitting here like, yeah, I did. I know I did. It's not
Yes.
a matter of relation."
Exactly. That's exactly the feeling. Perfectly described.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, you're bringing up quite a bit about your, like, psychic abilities that you have and everything. And I know one thing that I read is that you were born with you said, "I was born with, extrasensory abilities." What does that mean?
Yeah, yeah. So in my childhood, I had extrasensory abilities, meaning that I would sense and experience things that were not always just of this physical reality. So one example is, well, I got two examples. One is when I was falling asleep at night, and this was when I was really, really young, like 3 and 4 years old, like earliest memories. I would look up and watch the fireworks, as I called them, to myself, and I thought this was totally normal that everybody does this. But I would see these beautiful bursts of light that were exploding and moving and floating around, above my head, just in the dark, like on the ceiling, like in the air around me. Um, I did sometimes see auras as well. So I grew up Catholic, and when you're dragged to church every Sunday and there's nothing to do, and you just feel so desperately bored, you're just people watching, like looking around sometimes, and I would be looking at another person, and I'd see like this light outlined around them. And sometimes in the light, I would see objects connected to that person's um, field, although I wouldn't have had the word energy field in my vernacular back then. But yeah, I'd see all these different things that were around people, and that would be really interesting. There was another experience actually that I don't remember, but that my mom told me about, that she said, and that really freaked me out. That like was very weird. She says I was 2, and she got me up in the morning, waking up out of bed, and I was very bubbly, very, very, very happy, and I was telling her all about the experience that I had with Mother Mary, and explained that she was sitting on the edge of my bed. I met Mother Mary, da 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 da. And she was like, "No, you mean you had a dream about your Aunt Mary?" Like, we don't talk to her about religion. Like, she's 2. Like, you don't really, I mean, they'd only gone to church with me like a few times at that point, because like a 2-year-old, right? They're gonna just like raise hell. So she's like, "Where could she be getting this? Like, that doesn't make any sense." And I was very insistent in saying, "No, not Aunt Mary. Mother Mary, like the Blessed Mother, Mother Mary. She was here." And I was with her, and I was so happy. And my mom was trying to get what Mother Mary told me out of me, but I didn't really have much detail to fill in there. I was just saying, "I'm really happy," just expressing a lot of joy about it. And, yeah. I've actually always had an affinity or a connection with Mother Mary ever since then, I will say too. So even though I don't remember that, um, I love Mother Mary, and I feel close to her, very deeply close to her.
Is that the same person as Mary Magdalene?
Good question. Different person than Mary Magdalene. So people say like Mary Magdalene would have been like the wife of Jesus, and Mother Mary would have been his mom.
Oh, okay. Oh, I didn't mentally put together they were both Marys.
Yeah, yeah, both
Whoa.
Marys.
Whoa. I don't know, that just tripped me out there for a second.
Yeah.
That's cool. So you, I guess, don't remember anything of it. If you still have contact with her, have you asked her about it? Like, "What was it you told me whenever I was 2?"
I should do that. You are amazing, because I have literally never thought to ask that question my whole life. I will do that tonight. Oh my gosh, that's yeah, I never thought to ask. I always just kind of would think back on, that my mom having told me about that, and just go like, "Yeah, yeah, she's definitely been with me," and like that was like my little sort of like, "You know what? I believe that probably happened. I trust that happened, and she's been there with me from the beginning, and that's all I need to take from that story." But I've never thought to ask that. That is a great question. Oh my gosh. Very
Well,
curious about that.
I don't know if, this is, like, presumptuous of me, but would you be I don't know how long it takes to get into contacting her. Would you be open to doing it right now and asking?
Sure.
You
For
down?
me, I as a channeler, just to kind of preface, when I'm doing psychic work, I'm not super woo woo, like out of body experience. Full body channeling is what I call it. When sometimes people's like their voice changes and they're just channeling that being, and then they're kind of checked out. I am a little bit more, not that I don't think that that has a place, because that probably has a place and it's probably totally fine, to do that in certain contexts. But I think that it's a little bit more useful to be grounded. So for me, it doesn't take a lot of effort, doesn't take a lot of energy. I do it every day, and I teach being very grounded as you're doing, spiritual communication and spiritual channeling work, just because I think that you'll learn more from it if you can be there centered for the experience, receiving all of the knowledge that comes through. And especially if you're going to share it with other people, I think it comes through a little bit more relatable if the person is grounded and they're still themselves. So with that preface in mind, no, it doesn't take too much energy or too much, like preamble for me to get into it. And yeah, sure, why not? Let's see if anything comes through. I won't presume, but we'll see. So when I'm tuning in, I'll just describe what I'm doing mentally, kind of like narrating what I'm visualizing as we go. When I'm tuning in, I usually have a sense of different guides or angels who usually are standing around me in different positions. So, like when a particular guide might come in, they might always be standing on my left or on my right side or something like that. Um, and that's how I'll kind of know them. I might see the color connected to them in my mind's eye, and feel a particular emotional quality connected to that guide. And that's how I can identify who it is. For Mother Mary, since she's been a guide for me for a very long time, for many years, when I feel her come in, I'm drawing her in from above. So I'm describing that that's what I'm doing right now. I'm pulling in this sort of like feeling this presence and this energy from above. And whenever I'm around her, a couple of different things that I like to sense, and I'm just checking in to see that I'm getting that right now. First off, I do get a sense of comfort and peace, like a relaxation that I can feel in my body. And I'm just allowing that to kind of come in, just letting that drop in and feeling really good with that. And then I'm also feeling the kind of color and energy around her. So I see a blue and a very warm, kind of soft ivory colored light that is around her as well. Um, when she's around me, the next thing that I'm seeing, just describing everything that she's giving us here, is I feel her almost now standing right behind me and just a little bit above, so that it's almost like she's this, feels like an outline that's around me right now. Like when my hands move, her hands are cupping around my hands.
Hmm.
Um, and it feels almost like a very protective embrace. It's a very like loving, warm embrace. You might even associate with like a child being held by their mother. So I'm tuning in with her right now, and I'm feeling a little line of energy going right down into my heart chakra center. And she's communicating, wow, okay, that the reason for the transmission that she had with me, when I was young, when I was 2, was to communicate, you are safe, and to give me permission to hold, oh my gosh, to hold on to my intuition during my childhood at the point when most children shed it off and put it away, because it does not always feel safe to hold um, that type of awareness while in a human body, and while processing not just your own feelings, but also the feelings of other people around you, because you can be very wide open to other people's emotions, and that can get overwhelming, certainly. So she says that the point of it was to instill the memory of heaven's joy in my heart, memory of love. She's smiling because we've been talking about love today, and that makes her joyful. So that I would remember that it's safe to be like this, to see, feel, know, to hold sensitivity while in human form, which would help me later, she's saying, to wake up on time, and to wake up a little bit younger in my spiritual gifts than a lot of people do. because she said I had a reason for getting on purpose right away. Like there was a lot to do.
Yeah, and I
And I'm
think
just saying thank you to her now mentally. And then I'm just kind of feeling her there, stepping back. So she'll be here with us if we have anything else we need to ask of her.
yeah, I
That
mean,
was a lot.
yeah, thanks for doing that. I mean, and I think I read that 15 was whenever you started channeling, so that is very young compared to
Yeah.
majority of people I hear. While she's still kind of in the vicinity, I'm always curious about this question, which I've never asked before on the channel. Jesus and then his wife, Mary Magdalene, did they ever have a kid?
Okay. The emotion coming through from her is so good. It's so good. Sometimes I just get really overwhelmed because it feels so amazing to connect with her, and with the angels too. But she's saying yes and many. Yes, and many. She says that this was a huge part of their purpose at a soul level and their spiritual development and of their teachings. This is me reflecting on this now. I think it's kind of crazy that we lost that particular detail out of Jesus's life, but there was a whole chapter, a whole part of his life where being a family man was, I mean, a huge part of what he was teaching. Like to give the example of like a family, being in the fold of a loving family was everything to his teachings. He was teaching the consciousness of love, and the consciousness of love is nourished at the family level. So just like we were talking about earlier, oh my gosh, I feel all these connections going back to like earlier parts of our conversations. But when we were talking about like little kids, like they come into this world and they're so open to love, they're so ready to just love very easily. That's like our natural state of being when we come into this world, kind of thing. Well, the longer that a family can keep anchoring this safe, sustained, open state of love with one another and the relationships inside of a family, the stronger that that child is able to then grow up and take that consciousness, that energy of love, and live a very empathy driven, loving life. So, yes, he had children, is the short version of that answer. And there is a purpose behind it. So, interesting.
Is there a purpose that it's not something that's widely discussed, or even the counter is widely projected that he never did?
Yeah. I'm tuning into Mother Mary just instinctually because I want her feedback on this, as well as I'm like, I've got my own suspicions, my own thoughts about this as well. So I'm like gonna kind of mix the two or reconcile the two. Feeling in from her perspective, she's just in this perspective that is absolute constant compassion for humanity. And she says that there is so much storytelling, we could say, like I don't want to call it lies because she's not calling it lies. She's calling it almost just like distorted storytelling that is around Jesus's life, is around like the
Would
legend
narrative
that is
would a good
Jesus.
word
Yeah,
be
a
narrative?
lot of narrative. Yeah, where in order to spread the story around, people had to draw from what they already knew. So we gave him qualities of the gods that we already knew in, kind of the legends and the archetypes that were in the religions and the mythologies of the day. So there was a lot of that that got picked up into his narrative. There were also, um, unfortunately, and this kind of takes me into my territory where I'm like, I suspect that this has a part to play in all of it too. There was also a time of moving away from feminized spirituality, um, and that was coming up, that was happening in conjunction with the rise of Christianity. And this is probably, like what I'm sensing and feeling is this is like long after he was dead, like long after he's dead. Like this person has become like mythological legend status now. And there's just all these stories layered and packed around him. And depending on what culture you talk to, like they're going to have a different version or a different feel, a different idea around all of this. And I'm even being reminded, and I'm getting like a little psychic tap on my shoulder around this. They're saying, remember, like the story of Isis and her child is almost parallel, like, similar to, like, Mother Mary
Yeah.
and baby Jesus, like,
Yeah.
we're, like, picking up old things and we're, like, planting them onto this story. Well, so back to the part where it's like we get to a time where we're taking the femininity out of spirituality. Um, that was about control over. Um, I'm being pulled. This is so interesting because it's my speculation, but then I'm feeling all of this like psychic guidance kind of coming in too. So just know that the two are very combined with what I'm describing right now. But I'm being pulled to the Roman Empire specifically, and the way in which, of course, they're like accredited to spreading Christianity once like the Roman Empire switched over from like the polygamous, or not polygamous, that's marriage, um the polytheism that they had,
Mm.
to now, okay, Christianity is the official religion of the Roman Empire. So they're the ones that like spread that around originally, and their main goal was dominion, control over, power over. You have to have authority in order to assert control or power over, right? So in order to do that, you have to say there is one source from which you can find this spiritual religious truth, and you can't find it from other sources. So we're going to take you out of nature, because again, we're looking at like a lot of cultures and societies that had very, again, like sort of like feminine led spiritual practices which take you into nature. Let's go out of nature. God's not necessarily there, and we're going to put God inside of a brick and mortar, building, and God comes to you through the hierarchy of like there's now a priest that's going to tell you what is spiritual truth. And so that's sort of like we're taking that like feminine out of it, and if we have to take the feminine out of it, then we have to get rid of all of the stuff that is maybe connected to Jesus's life, that would take the authority away from these maybe like priests, right? So we have to take the gospel of Mary Magdalene out of the scriptures completely. We have to turn her into someone else
Mm.
in the narrative. So maybe she's not his wife and she's just this like person that he saves or he helps, right? He's the story was like, oh, she's like a sex worker that he ends up like helping or forgiving or saving or something like that, right?
Mm.
So we're changing the story about who she is, because we can't have the power back in the hands of the goddess, because that's what these people know in their pagan religion. They're going to assign that to this religion that we're trying to use in the psychological dominion and authority that we're asserting over these people. We are Romanizing the world, and we can't do that if women are in power, because that's already that's going to take them right back to their roots. So we're taking them out of their roots, and that's why we have to take the family and the wife out of it, and just make it about listen to your male authority, and that's what you get.
Wow. Yeah, there's a lot of parallels here because I have been diving into like the Gnostic texts. I'm not sure how familiar you are. Gospel of Mary
A little
Magdalene is
bit.
one of them.
Yeah.
And another one's Gospel of Thomas. And I I did write my first book around it and breaking it down. And a piece of that is pursuing God through the idea of wisdom, or his manifestation of wisdom. And the crux of it is that there's a divine spark of God that lives within all of us. So a huge reason that I kind of allude to, I try to say that it's not on purpose, but it might be, you never know, is that they left out these books, this idea that you can find God through wisdom, because then you don't need this priest to be this intermediary between you and God. And it's touching on exactly what you're saying right now. So
Yes,
I guess I also
totally.
partially wanted to plug my book there. So
Oh,
guys,
that's
go buy my
great.
book. um, but speaking of books, and this is maybe more of a question for Mary, did she like, because all of this, like for me, intuitionally is like, there's something here, like, yes. Has she guided anybody to writing any text, maybe stuff I can search online and pull up that someone has done a deep dive to plot out or write a book on the divine union between Jesus and Mary Magdalene in regards to them actually having a family? Like, is there any text that
Mm,
exists that we could look up?
I don't know. Let's tune in and see. When I connect with Mother Mary now, um, I do feel her behind a lot of spiritual learning and spiritual guidance. Um, You know, she's actually pointing to one of the people that she worked through famously the most, but this is not necessarily going to show us any teachings about, like, family and marriage and children and that kind of thing. Um, she worked very, very strongly through Mother Teresa, she's showing us. And this is her particular specialty. Like, we're looking at Mother Mary, like, as an ascended master, a bodhisattva, or what have you, whatever you wanna call her. She is a soul that has great compassion for the people that are suffering the most in the world, and this includes the poor, people that are experiencing extreme poverty, um, as well as those that are experiencing illness, like just great suffering around these major, major issues. And her heart usually goes out to children, so she's always at the forefront helping to heal children. Um, and then she's also saying protecting the inner child as well. Um, she likes to stay behind the scenes as well. So while there's some people maybe that might channel her and write something of her, I'm not sure. I haven't read anything myself that was like someone saying like, "Oh, I channeled Mother Mary, and this is the book that I wrote having channeled Mother Mary." I maybe it exists, it probably does, but I haven't read anything to that degree. But she's showing us that she's very humble behind the scenes and doesn't need credit when it comes to her helping to guide information and knowledge through us. And that is, I think, important to know. I think that that's significant because she's saying that, it's not about sometimes like the big name, the big sensationalized like, "Oh, here's your exciting, like, proof, like, you've got Mother Mary working a miracle through you, da 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 da." Of course, famously, there are, like, a lot of different, like, Christian or Catholic, stories about people, like, even into, like, fairly recent, like, modern times where people have seen, little children, it's usually that'll see visions of Mother Mary, and it makes this beautiful difference in their lives, and, so, yeah, I mean, there are moments that are big and splashy, but she's saying for the most part, it's not about, like, worshiping the hand that's pointing at God. It's about getting the actual message and digesting that message of love or that message of healing in the way that's going to make the biggest difference in your life. So she's showing us that, a lot of times, these ascended masters, like even Jesus, Mary Magdalene as well, are really kind of working a little bit more on the down low, a little more like behind the scenes because they don't necessarily need people getting distracted by the fact that like, "Oh, it's you." And then it's like
Mm,
that becomes the focal point instead of the message itself, and I think that that's one of the maybe current challenges that we can see if we're looking at the arc of Christianity, that sometimes it's about, um, worshiping a personality that we're assigning to Jesus instead of doing as he said, perhaps. Um, so I think that, maybe whatever channeled work they're doing or whatever's connected to helping to spread Christ consciousness, which is really, I think, another word for love consciousness. I think that it's more about giving very authentic, genuine, down to earth human experiences that they don't need like credit for, kind of thing, if that makes sense.
yeah, it does, and I think an interesting point you have there is I've always heard that, like, you have to what is it? It's like you have to be, worshiping Jesus in order to get the God, but I think a interesting parallel that I've seen, right? Because Jesus said something to the effect of, like, "I am the way," and I think what he was referencing was that Christ consciousness or that love consciousness, as you put it, which is the way. It's not that his mortal being is the way to get there. It's the state of being, it's the consciousness, it's the metaphysical understanding or the density of his awareness or consciousness that we need to get through in order to reach God. So I do think that that's a very important point, and maybe, because it's interesting, that answer wasn't exactly where I was expecting it to go. So maybe I need to reword the question in, taking Mother Mary out of the picture or taking Jesus out of the picture, taking any of the ascended masters out of the picture. A better question would be is, are there any books or documents that exist that would give us a more enlightened picture or a deeper understanding of the relationship between Jesus, Mary Magdalene, and their kids.
Yeah, I don't know. No idea. I actually haven't read the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, but it's on my list. Definitely something that I would wanna check out.
And put that on the list.
Yeah.
Could you ask, Mother Mary if she might know if there's someone who has written a document that would verify, I hate to use the word verify, that doesn't feel right, but
Yeah,
would give this this
kind of
deeper
feels
understanding?
mm, I could try, but to be honest, I got the answer that I got the first time. So, I don't know that I'd get anything different than that. I think that
Hmm,
each person is drawn to the the reading, like the literature, the knowledge that they need in the moment that's going to help them most on their spiritual path. So I'd say for you or I or for anyone listening, trust what you're drawn to. Trust what information, kind of stumbles onto your path, what books or what literature, kind of helps you and take it from there. I think honestly that there can be spiritual truth found in every religion. Um, not to say that they're all perfect, right? That they all have there's a grain of truth in all religions and in so many spiritual writings there can be truth that can nourish wherever you are on your path at that particular time. But as to whether someone's written like a history where they talk about like these are the names of Jesus's children and like this is what their family life was like and this is what they did, really like I don't know that I would do that without reading, all of that myself and knowing that, yeah, I agree with everything that's in there. I wouldn't
hmm.
try to test and channel like, there's a title of a book somewhere out there that I've never heard of and never read that I'm going to try to bring through for you right now. I don't know that feels like, for me at least, the best approach. Um, yeah, and I guess just again, the reason why is because it's more about just sort of looking at the fact that it's like, yeah, like Jesus is someone that had a family. I trust that, you know. I trust that and I believe that that's very true. And knowing that yeah, that kind of makes him a little bit more human and it also shows us the value of family as well. That this is something that he was part of. Um so I think that there's value in it, just in having that knowledge there and maybe just having faith in it. Or not having faith in it if it doesn't resonate with you, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sort of getting this, um, feeling that it's and the way you're answering is that it's coming across as, you can believe this if you wanna believe it, you don't have to believe it, and if it's on your path in order to more deeply, like, find the physical text or find the physical thing, then
It
it
will
will
find you.
appear.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
will appear in your reality somehow.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, again, if it had appeared on mine already, I'd be sharing it, but for whatever reason, it hasn't, and maybe that's just not it hasn't been part of my path yet, so I teach what I know, um, and yeah, I mean, there's just nothing that I've read so far that makes me feel like, yeah, that's for sure the thing that you should read to know about this.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's a it's an answer that I think more deeply empowers the individual. I personally want an answer just to have the physical understanding because I feel like that's the world that we're transitioning out of, which is like, where's the evidence, you know?
Yeah.
But I think at a bigger perspective, I can see how that answer is more empowering to the individual as opposed to answer that an answer that might be more disempowering at a general level. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I've heard that there are a lot of people that, channel, like Mary Magdalene. I think that there are people that have written like very famous books about Mary Magdalene. Again, not that I've like read them and explored them enough, but I tend to err on the side of caution and reason, when it comes to suggesting channeled works to other people until I've completely digested the entire thing myself because there is there are some mixed messages out there, and I think that there are certain messages spiritually that can come across that are damaging. I don't know, is damaging even the right word in this context? That can be distorting, that can take you down like
Pull
a
you further away from the light.
yes, yes, exactly, exactly. Um, all channeling, this is how I describe channeling. All comes through your own consciousness. So it is not the same. Even people that are doing full body channeling, it is not the same as having that entity in front of you, like talking to you. If someone's channeling a message from spirit, then it is flowing through the deepest part of our human consciousness. It is flowing through like the collective mind. I think that that's the deepest part of our consciousness as human beings, is the collective mind, and you could even call that the spirit world if you wanted to. And then that channeled information or energy goes up into the subconscious mind. That's where we contain all of our biases, our beliefs, our memories, our what have yous that are in our subconscious mind. And the channeled information has to make its way through all of that to make it into your conscious mind so that you can channel it. And I mean, I don't think that there are any perfect channelers out there in the world, myself included, because you see what you see what you can get. And when it's useful and when it's healing and when it creates a positive difference, wonderful, good. But always read it with that knowledge that it's like, this is still coming through a human, a human filter where we've got all of the, like subconscious memories, biases, preferences, etc., like beliefs that that person's holding on to that could limit the amount of information that might be coming through. Um, or even put a spin on things that might not be again like spiritually helpful at the end, like if we're looking at like the idea of some of the channeled works that are out there. So again, I just kind of like err on the side of caution, and I think that it's good to kind of bring discernment into some of that stuff as well.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good way to describe, especially when I think majority of channelers put that majority of good channelers, they always say, like, "Take what resonates with you and leave what doesn't."
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I've heard like there was a very famous psychic that I heard speak one time that said like it's like 80/20, like 80, like take 80% of this, and like the best psychic channeler there might be 80% of it that could resonate with you, even if you're in a lot of agreement with that person or feel very resonant to that message. But there might be 20% that for whatever reason, whether it's because of how you're interpreting it in your mind receiving the channeling, or whether it's how the channeler is expressing it as it moves out
Mm,
through their subconscious mind into their conscious mind, it might be a little skewed. It might be a little distorted. It might look almost like a funhouse mirror where you look into it and you look like you're shaped totally differently. And so we can miss the mark a little bit because we're human, and that's kind of like how our consciousness processes things at this stage.
wow. So then and I can see how there's you're channeling it sounds like multiple different beings. I think I've seen on a couple of your things where it's like Archangel Michael or, in this case, Mother Mary, and I know you've talked about ascended masters, and you've also talked about angels, and so I'm curious from your perspective is, what are ascended masters and angels, and then, like, what are the differences between the 2?
Yeah, yeah. So ascended masters, they're distinct from angels because they are human souls. We usually think of them as human souls, so someone who's lived a human life or usually multiple human lifetimes, and now they've reached this state of enlightenment. And they're here watching over humanity as we work towards that enlightenment. They're guiding from that mindset. So another, actually, like a synonym would be like bodhisattva, like if we're looking at like a Buddhist model for it. So that's the enlightened soul that chooses to stay until all souls can join them up in that enlightened state. So that's the ascended master. Whereas angels aren't humans. Typically, like you think of an angel as a direct extension of God. So they're a direct extension or expression of the highest consciousness. So they're beings that have a very high level of consciousness. They're always in a state that is absolutely pure, 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 uncontested love. So they don't have an ego. They have compassion for those that do, but they don't have one themselves. And it's a consciousness of just pure love, and that's the angels.
So then were they never angels were never incarnated?
No, typically no. I've talked to many people that have had the feeling or the intuition or the memory of like, I think I'm an incarnated angel. I think that I was an angel once, but now I'm on the human path. And who am I to say they're wrong? I'm not. I am curiously wide open, and I know that as human beings, it's kind of like not always possible for us to see the absolute entire fully zoomed out truth of these things. So I think that there's a big possibility around that, like human beings that in a past incarnation or a previous time might have been angelic. Maybe that's true, but yeah, the classically typically like we think of angels as like they don't live human lifetimes. They are outside of time, outside of lifetimes, they are outside of karma, outside of all of it, and they are pure pure consciousness of God, pure extensions of God.
Mm. So then I'm interested how this connects to astrology because I know that you talk a lot on your channel. It's how I found you when you made your Lionsgate video. I was like, oh, this chick would be a cool person to sit down and talk to. And what do you know? Right. Correct.
Yes.
Um, so whenever it comes then to astrology and angels, like what's going on here? Because if we're all these enlightened beings, then astrology shouldn't have any effect on us, right? But yet there's massive evidence that even just down to the moon, that people get more aggressive whenever it's a full moon, or more crime is committed whenever it's a full moon versus other
Yeah.
times of the month. And so like what's going on here? What's the connection here between astrology and then angels?
I have asked the angels the exact same question, and I'll describe the answer that I've received in the past regarding this. So, the planets, the stars, the movements of all of these different like cosmic alignments don't necessarily have power over us. Like when people think of astrology as like this system that um, describes like, okay, these planets are like influencing me and they're determining my personality and that kind of thing. Like, no, I don't believe that. I don't think that that's true. I believe in absolute free will. Um, and I have a very different view of astrology. And I think that people that also have had like astrology skepticism, that hopefully this might like resonate with them, because there are many people, and rightfully so, that are like, a planet can't tell me what to do. Like, heck no, like, no, that does not, no, I'm choosing my own life. I'm doing my own thing. Um, so, and I believe that. I believe that we all have free will. When we're looking very deeply into anything, especially into some expression of nature, we're going to see incredible um, harmony. We're going to see the incredible systems that make up reality. And you could do this with anything. You could do this with math, with music, and see just this deep harmony, this deep like symmetry to the way that like the structure of the universe works. And you could just spend your whole life exploring that endlessly. So when you're looking at something like astrology, you're looking at like, okay, there are planets that are like orbiting, and we're from Earth, from our vantage point on the Earth, we're seeing them in these different alignments. And for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, our ancestors from every single continent where human civilization has existed on the planet have been looking up at the stars. And with great wonderment, it makes us feel small to look up at the stars. And so we look at the stars and like it makes it feel so big and it's so awe-inspiring that we're looking for God. We're looking for this sense of like the divine when we're looking at all of that. If you look deeply enough into, again, anything with the intent of finding God, or really just the intent of finding meaning, finding truth, right? You're going to find it. And basically, what you're going to find is that reality is a mirror reflecting you back to you. So if you are an incarnation of God, you are a piece of God living this individual human temporary lifetime, then when you're looking and gazing deep into the stars, if you look deeply enough with an open enough mind, you're going to see that there is a symmetry and a harmony here. And what I'm seeing is reflecting in the mirror, it's reflecting back consciousness, it's reflecting back human consciousness. So astrology isn't determining what you're going to feel and who you are, it's a mirror reflecting back the cycles and the rhythms of consciousness, because consciousness is moving. It's not a static, solid thing. It's a thing that flows and moves and expands constantly. Like space, I guess, like it's always moving. And if you look at it long enough, you'll notice, oh, there's things that keep cycling around again and again. Like at a certain time of year, we're going to see particular constellations in the sky because of our orientation to those things. And so, when our ancestors, again, over a long, long period of time, continually started to recognize the patterns, there's a pattern recognition here, they go, oh, there's a structure to the universe. And I'm getting a sense of meaning from this structure of the universe. If you look deeply enough, you'll start to see that structure is also in me. When I'm projecting, when I'm seeing this structure in the universe, it's like a movie projector projecting like something out onto the big screen on the sky. Like we're seeing
Mm.
what's there in the collective human heart and soul, and all of the cycles and rhythms and archetypes and lessons that classically make their way into the human experience as we live our lives. So, yeah, I think that the way that astrology and all that, kind of fits into spiritual growth, fits into when we're thinking about angels and that kind of thing, it all fits together quite beautifully. First off, it all really reflects that we are in a state of union with everything. Everything is one. Everything is absolutely connected in a pure state of just this finessed connection. Like there is connection and order beyond what we could possibly imagine right now. Science, math, religion, music, astrology, whatever it is, has only barely scratched the surface, seen the tip of the iceberg with regards to how incredibly ordered the universe is. And when we're thinking about these things and we're going, well, but I didn't, the planets were predicted because they're on these cycles and courses, right, to move into particular alignments at certain times. Like we know that the full moon falls on this date because you look at the sky and you observe that that's how that happens. Venus is going to be in the sky at this position during this month, and it's going to be in another position in another month, right? Like that's predetermined. But I thought you said free will. Are we not contradicting ourselves? Here's the thing. So the angels, I've asked this question to the angels. The angels like to describe that the angels are beings that live outside of time and space. They live outside of this model of time through which our consciousness is perceiving everything. And they see the union of everything. The nature of all of creation, so that includes the stars and the planets and how everything's orbiting, right? That was all created from a consciousness, from a perspective that was also outside of time. We come from that too. We come from again, English language giving us a little bit of a limitation here, a place. Is it a place? We come from a source that is outside of time, that is outside of, again, the separation that we experience by way of being in time and in spaciousness. So the design of the universe is reflecting something that is very, very timeless. And yes, we are simultaneously, our free will choices, our experiences that we're having are co-creating what is being reflected back to us in the sky. But all of this, you have to remember, there's a dimension of it that exists outside of time. So it only feels like, oh, this contradicts. This is such a paradox. Like this contradicts itself. Like I can't have free will and also have a destiny at the same time. Like I can't have free will and have astrology also make sense at the same time. Reason why is because we're looking at it through a lens of time. And
Mm.
time is very, very, to use a time word, temporary construct that we just experience now from this dimension, this dimensional vantage point. And we're dealing with systems that exist, that were created outside of it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's I think it might have been 2 podcasts ago with Asha where so what this will be it's actually gonna be episode 90. I'm not sure if that number has significance to you. But in episode 88 with Asha, she was talking about how there's this mixture of predeterminism and free will that is going in at play, and it has to do with the idea of karma, where you have these karmic patterns, so you will keep playing them out until you use your free will to change them. So you're predetermined by your karma, but you always have the free will to change it. So it's almost like this paradoxical nature of free will versus determinism. And I'm seeing that play out in this answer as well, of the universe and angel, or the physical material universe and angels, where, okay, yes, these physical patterns of the stars and the planets are all going to play out, but at the same time, we're from something that's beyond space and time. So it's kind of like a yes and. So then when we scale this back, because I feel like we might be getting a little heady, like a little bit in the higher dimensions right now. So if we scale this back to more 3D perspective, a more denser perspective, we have a lot of people who will say, "Oh, well, Mercury's in retrograde, so everything's going to go to shit," or "This is about to happen, so your finances are about to become abundant and this and that because this planet is in this house and this is the predestined, if you will, order of your life." And at some level, I mean, if you make a Lionsgate video, there's things of that you should focus on during this time period. So how much of that then comes into, well, if I believe it to be true, it becomes true, versus this is actually a part of the divine order of the universe, so I should just play into that divine order?
I think that there's probably, for most people, a little bit of both going on at the same time. So if someone is really invested into a concept like Mercury retrograde and, they believe like, "Oh, everything's gonna go to shit," then maybe it will, But I'm actually not one of those people that believes that about, retrogrades or anything or any type of, particular astrological alignment where it's like, "Oh, it's like this, so now I'm gonna be like this." I always think we have free will to choose, like, what is that gonna be like? Like, it's sort of like saying, "Okay, it's raining outside, so that's the vibe you're gonna get. It's gonna be wet, it's gonna be colder. Now you get to choose how to react to that. Like, it's raining, does that mean you're gonna get wet? No, not necessarily. It just depends on how you choose to respond and, how you're navigating that particular energetic climate, outside of you. But yeah, I would say that definitely for those that are very, very, very belief is everything. Belief creates a reality. So, those that are very invested in the idea that, my astrology says it's going to be like this, they may be playing into that, creating a self fulfilling prophecy. But I think it's important that we hold our power and we remember that we're the powerful ones always, and we don't give our power away to anything outside of ourselves.
Mm. So it's almost our responsibility of what we want to align with. Is that a good way to put it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like what we want to align with, what we want to bring out of the, kind of like energetic vibe or weather, sort of around us. Like, what do I want to do with this? Like, what are the benefits, the potential drawbacks, and like how am I going to respond to it?
So then is there a healthy approach to astrology? Because like, maybe I'll give you a little bit more, maybe it'll help if I give a little bit more background of like my perception of it. Because my current perception, which I'm always open to updating, is that astrology tends to describe our ego. So like the way that I've seen this, or like a way that I've been dividing the world, if you will, which I can tell already has some pitfalls in it, is that we have our ego and then our soul, right? So ego being like our material physical form of attachments, desires, the things that I am physically engrossed with. And I think that this is where, in my current opinion, is where astrology comes in, is like, okay, your soul entered your physical body at this exact time. And these were where the planets were arising and where they were located. So you are going to have a predisposition to um, certain energies or certain experiences with your family or certain experiences with loved ones or money or all these different things. And so whenever I've had people read my chart in regard to my astrological signs, they've brought forth a ton of memories that are usually linked to before my spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
And I guess where it seems to me, and even as another corollary after my spiritual awakening, I can tell it's a lot more difficult for people even to pin down like what my sign is, like whether I'm fire or air or earth or water. And so where am I going with this? Oh, my current perception is that, if we're able to transcend this ego to the best of our abilities, then astrology doesn't really have an impact on us. But at some level, it seems like if we're going to be operating in this physical world, we should give it at least some sort of attention. Where was I going with this? Oh, so is there like a little bit of a trap that's going on here that gets set with astrology to keep us in the physical world? Like what's your opinion kind of on what I've just laid out there?
That's a great question, and I would totally agree that I think a lot of astrology really looks at, like, the ego side of life. Like, I first off, I'm not an astrologer, but an astrology enthusiast. Like, I find it very fascinating, but I can't say that I'm an astrologer because I do not have even, like, a sliver of the skills that an astrologer, like, an actual astrologer does, and I'm always just, like, so impressed when I hear, like, an astrologer, really, really describe things. Um, but yeah, they oftentimes really go into ego stuff sometimes where it's just like, "Oh, like, this is, like a Mars energy. We're getting conflict. We're getting this, like, like a propensity to, like, fight and argue or, like, power struggles and da 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 da." Um, and they're talking about those types of interactions, like the things that we have to navigate and work through when it comes to human ego, when it comes to that part of us that can experience like an attachment to this illusion of separation, all of the challenges and ups and downs that we can experience on the human path as a result of that. You can definitely reconcile the two, and I think that yes, astrology still has something of value to show us, to share with us if we're thinking, okay, yes, I want to be on a spiritual path where my ultimate goal would be to rise into a higher consciousness, maybe like find a way to like evolve through this ego thing, like what can I reach a union instead of this illusion of separation? That's what I'd prefer to do. Well, I think what astrology can do is that it can sometimes show us the patterns and the cycles of these ego-based archetypes. So we might go through an experience where we know what it's like to be wounded. In astrology, there's a minor planet, I think, and it's called Chiron, and it represents the wounded healer. Just as an example, so when you see maybe some kind of an alignment with Chiron, you might say like, oh, like maybe there will be things going on in my life where I might meet the wounded parts of me right now. And I think that it can give feedback to show us a little bit more about, okay, what's happening? I want to understand what's happening to me at the level of ego and what it is that maybe needs to be healed or needs greater insight in order for me to grow on my spiritual path. And that's actually the
Mm,
approach that I take when I share things about astrology. It's like, okay, this if this is a mirror, then the mirror is giving me helpful personal feedback. It's the mirror that's showing me what's there deeper down inside that will give me greater awareness of things that I might not be paying attention to. Self-awareness to me is one of the most useful tools on the spiritual path, like just being aware of what I'm holding in my consciousness. And if astrology, again, is a mirror, then it's alerting you to things that you might not have considered previously and bringing meaning um, to those things as well, so that it's not just by accident that I'm having this lesson, happen right now, because maybe this lesson is connected to a transit in the astrological chart that's also connected to this bigger karmic cycle of learning or these other archetypal
mm.
themes that I might learn about. So, yeah, I think it can just give us more context on navigating being a human with an ego and going through like the human learning curve of healing from the fear and the pain of the seeming separation that we all experience in having an ego.
Yeah, I just lost my train of thought. Womp womp. Oh, I'm seeing this like, it's almost like this over we need to avoid the overinvestment in maybe one line of the physical world. So, if we take a step back here, because I was thinking this in regards, you were like you talked about Chiron in that example. For me,
Mhm.
I was thinking back to a time whenever I was in Joshua Tree, and I saw the star Sirius. I didn't know it was Sirius at the time, but after investigation, I found out that it was Sirius, and there was, like, this internal, like, resonance whenever seeing the star, and it led me to be like, "Okay, what does the star Sirius represent?" And I don't remember exactly what I found, but there was a couple things, but then one of those things was, like, something that was troubling me at the time, and so it led me on to this path of a deeper understanding in regards
Wow.
to myself, and I know that I've done this all the time with, numerology or with animals where if I'll see one animal over and over again, I'll be like, "Okay, what's going on here? Like, what something's trying to be communicated with me." So then I'll go out of my way and I'll say, "Okay, like, what was I thinking about whenever I saw this animal? What is my emotional state been recently? What are issues that I'm experiencing in my life?" Then whenever I research, I'll usually type in, like, spiritual significance of animal X. I'll see what comes up, and then whatever resonates with me, I'm like, "Oh, okay, that's the lesson or that's the message that I'm supposed to be taking on." And so that to me is like what you're highlighting is almost maybe more, and I'm tooting my own horn here, as a more, like, harmonized way to approach these things
Yeah.
versus which I've heard people say before, because I have a buddy who has brought this up before where I guess he's what's considered a cusp. So he's, like, on the day in
Mm.
between. I don't remember which one it is. I'm gonna sound like an idiot, like, maybe, like, Aries and Pisces or something like that, like, he's
Yeah,
right in
yeah.
between. And so he talked about a lot or kept bringing it up to me how he's been meeting a lot of people who have commented on the fact that he's a cusp, and it sounds like they put him into a bin essentially of, "Oh, well, since you're this kind of cusp, then this means this, this, and this about you." And I can see how that's such a dangerous place to be of like, okay, he's an immortal god at one level, and yet we're gonna just chastise him for being in this, you know, this box. And so it seems like even the ego can come in and warp this item that has potential divinity within it.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that that can happen with anything. And also, by the way, I love what you were saying about how if we're going down, a path and we're listening to our intuition, like you did at Joshua Tree, like you got a strong intuitive spark, like there's a feeling, there's something I feel connected to regarding like the star Sirius that I don't even know have the name for yet, but I want to know. Um, that intuition is going to lead you to all the meaning that you're ever gonna need or want, and it reflects too. Like I love that you look up like when you see animals or like some other type of sign. Like we can look these things up and see like, okay, is there significance for me in this? Is there a message for me in this? It just goes back to what how the angels describe astrology to me is like if you look deeply into nature, any form of nature whatsoever, you're going to see God staring back at you. You're going to see a mirror of
Hmm.
that truth that's inside of you somehow, and it's going to guide you and give you some kind of a messaging that could really bring value to your life. So yeah, I think doing that anywhere is a wonderful thing. And shamans, I've heard it described once before, and I can't recall exactly where now, but that shamans would be people that could like be so in touch with nature that they would see and read and feel significance in everything, like down to like the pine cone that fell from the tree and that landed on the ground next to them. They're just so in tune, reading so deeply in to the deeper layers of these things that they would see meaning in all of it. I think that's there for us to find because if God is in everything, like we're like the original thing we were talking about, like love. If love is God and love is like this essence that it is, let's assume is imbued within everything, then yeah, if you look closely into anything, you merge into connection with anything, you'll find that piece of God in it. We'll find that like whether it's with each other or whether it's with astrology or whether it's with spirit animals or anything like that, that the message we're supposed to get will will come and find us if we're open to receiving it. And hey, if you're not the type of person that's interested or open to receiving a message through astrology, through, like angels, through like whatever, then the message will find you another way. There's an infinite abundance. So there's what you need will find you eventually. We're all on the spiritual path, whether we realize it or not. Like that is the human path, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's actually reminded me of something that happened yesterday where I was leaving jujitsu and a buddy was about to take the bus to go home, and I was like, "No, no, 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 I got you." Like it was like a 10-minute drive from my house, like where I was to, it was like 10 minutes out of my way. I was like, "Dude, I got you." So I was driving him home, and halfway through, I didn't really even notice it, but I guess like a car cut us off, and he starts talking about how he's like, "Dude, over like the last 4 years, I keep getting cut off by Subarus. Like, I don't know what's going on." Like, he's like, "And it's only Subarus." And I could tell he's starting to get mad. And I was like, "Huh." Well, I was like, "There's probably a message there for you." He's like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "Well, do you meditate?" He's like, "No, not really." And I was like, "You should sit down and meditate for like a couple minutes. I don't know how long it'll take you to get in the zone, but just meditate and just keep saying the word Subaru over and over again and
I
see what
love
comes
that.
up." And he was like, he was energized by that. He was like, "Oh my gosh, dude, like that's," he's like, "I don't meditate, but like I feel like I need to do that." And I was like, "Yeah, dude, like you're gonna have to do that and let me know." And so I think this perfectly highlights exactly what you're talking about on multiple levels, right? One, you can get these messages from other stuff. Like,
Yeah.
who knows? Like Subaru to him could remind him of some old time when he has Japanese tattoos. So that's an interesting comment. But an old time where he was a Japanese warrior and Subaru meant something completely
Yeah.
different, and it'll spark some sort of memory for him. It could be as that complex all the way down to the fact that he needs to buy a Subaru. I don't know.
Yeah.
But this, I think this really highlights one, you talking about how the universe is going to find different ways to talk to you. It could be a car for all we know. And then I think the other thing, and again, I want to say this as humbly as possible, is that once you get on this path is you can tap into those more subtle frequencies. It's like humbly, like I just felt like it was so intuitive to me that the universe is trying to get his attention in regard to this word or this card Subaru. But to him, he's been seeing it for 4 years, and he was just like, I don't know why this is happening. And it's like, well, ask the universe, like,
Yeah.
why are you putting this in my field of vision?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's one of the best things that we can do is to have that curiosity that perhaps is especially geared towards self inquiry, really looking within, for those answers. Which, like brings me back to like what you were saying before when you were saying, Jesus says, I am the way and the truth and the light. And you were saying, it's Christ consciousness. Like thinking that out a little bit more, it's like, I am is the truth, the way, and the light. I am is also the name of God, in the roots of that religion. So if we're thinking like God is inside of us, that I amness, that God presence inside of us, I think maybe what Jesus was saying and what maybe you're also saying, what we're kind of saying together here, maybe we're discovering together here, is like look within. You see stuff outside of you that is intuitively giving you that uncanny sense of mystery or sense that there's something bigger or deeper there for you to discover. Like, I am. Look within. That's the way you can find the truth. The truth is inside of you all the time. Look within, you'll find it.
Yeah, and even to expand on that, and this kind of messed me up a little bit mentally once I kind of realized this. But we have this perception, right? You want to say duality. We talk about how there's like the external world and the internal world. But what really sent shockwaves through me was whenever I realized that everything is actually happening within me. There is no external world. And you might be sitting there thinking like, okay, that's crazy. There is an external world, right? Like you can feel the table in front of you. You can see, like I'm looking at you. But in reality, my eyes are processing this image of you inside my head. My hands
Yes.
that feel this table are only feeling it inside my hand, like within my skin, my nerves. When you taste something, you literally have to put it inside your mouth in order to taste it. your taste buds are inside your tongue, right? Like that's where all the reactions are occurring, and they get mixed up in your brain. And then like sound waves, they have to even penetrate your ear in order for it to occur. And so
Yeah.
like that, like I don't even know what to do with that. It's like there is no even external world. It's literally I'm experiencing everything inside myself.
Yes, I would agree completely. Everything is within us. Which to me kind of like takes us right back to like maybe why self-love is so important, because if everything that we're experiencing is inside of this like universe, this reality that is very within, um, having a relationship with yourself is then probably one of the most important things that we can do while we're having the human experience. And if we can imbue that relationship with love, which in my way of thinking is God, then you can awaken that God inside. So yeah,
Mm.
it is all within. I think that that is very valuable.
Yeah, waking that God within, because that's actually a huge piece of my spiritual like progress I've been making. Is it's called self-realization fellowship. I'm not sure how much you are
Hmm.
aware of like Paramahansa Yogananda.
Just a little bit, yeah, yeah. A
Just a
little
little
bit
bit.
familiar.
So his organization is called Self-Realization Fellowship, and it's all in the title there. Like, and the idea is to self-realize as God. It's like there's a and this ties right back to Gnosticism that we were talking about earlier, where we have a divine spark within us, right?
Yeah.
However, nobody identifies with it. Like you ask somebody like, "Who are you?" They'll be like, "Oh, I'm Sarah." It's like, "No, that's your
Yeah.
name. Who are you?" You're like, "Well, I'm a YouTuber." It's like, "No, that's what you do. Who are you?" And
Yeah.
you quickly realize that everything that you label yourself as is this external materialistic reflection, but at the core of you is God. So the question is, or I think that the ultimate pursuit is, and I think all the ascended masters have said this, is that to cultivate that God essence or to find God. So that's saying finding the divine spark within you that is God. So how do you align the most? Are you creating actions that get you a little bit closer to that divine spark? And again, and I think this goes to deep biblical teachings when, they say like God hears everything or God sees everything. It's like, yeah, because you are literally seeing and hearing and doing everything. There's no thought
Yes.
that God doesn't know. It's like, yeah, because you're hyper aware of your own thoughts. It's like you can't
Yes.
tell. It's like you can't lie to God because you know if you're lying or sidestepping the truth. It's so much more than a big dude in the sky that's looking over you and making sure that you do all the right things and you follow the 10 commandments. It's like there's literally a piece inside every single one of us that's watching every action and every thought and holding you, and you hold yourself accountable to that thing. It's like there is no guy that's judging you. It's like you're judging yourself every moment. You know the things you need to do and the things you need to not do. It's like, are you following that? Are you stepping
Yeah.
out of those patterns? Are you overcoming those patterns? Are you just falling to them?
Yeah. I would agree with that, and I love the way that you described that, yeah, it's like God knows you because it is in you. It is part of your first person perspective, your first person narrative. I think that is totally true, and I think that then when it comes down to like this, this like what you said sparked this in my thinking. When
Nice
it
pun
comes
intended.
down, what was that?
Pun intended.
Pun intended, yes. Yes. When you were saying, like, then, like, how do we, like, like, navigate, like, am I on the right path or the wrong path? Am I falling into the bad patterns or, like, maybe, like, the good ones, kind of paraphrasing there. Um, it was making me think again about, like, that just indescribable harmony in the universe. Like, just everything is so to me, I think, very ordered, like, just incredibly mind-blowingly ordered and harmonious and structured in the universe. So I think that God part of us, that deep knowing, that ancient, eternal, conscious spark of I am inside of us, I think that part of us knows when we are in harmony, when our patterning is falling in alignment and in harmony, with that order of the universe. and when it might be, kind of playing a little bit off key. Like, like as a musician, like, when you're
Mm,
playing or singing the notes, right, that fit in with the music that is there, behind you. You know what notes kind of fit in because it's either pleasing to the ear or maybe unpleasing to the ear. There are artists that will argue, is there ever really a wrong note though, if you want to get like more avant-garde with it and that kind of thing? And it's like, really, well, you could say the same thing with spirituality, for we're applying it to this context where it's like, no, we can choose anything we want. We can choose any action we want. We can choose to do whatever we want. But it's about how pleasing is that result? How do you like that result? Do you want that result? Is that the result that makes you feel good? And maybe to the avant-garde artists, like that's, yeah, like playing something that's deliberately falling into the music of the universe in a chaotic way is what they want. And there's some kind of music, falling into that too. I think everything has the potential to be very, very, very harmonious. I'm kind of going off with it,
I
but
mean,
yeah.
that's a natural state, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's harmony.
Yeah.
And it's reminding me, talking about music, are you aware of Flume? I assume you're aware of Flume,
No.
the artist?
No.
No?
Mm-mm. No, I
Oh. Throw
admittedly
him on
live a
your
little bit under a rock, so just to put that out there.
okay. Well, you said Burning Man, so I was thinking like EDM-ish scene. He's kind of like a bigger name in that EDM scene. But,
Never
I
heard of,
mean,
yeah.
definitely go check him out. Go check him
Well,
out because his music, again, EDM, but it's exactly what you're describing, where if you listen to it,
mm,
you're like, "This is just pure chaos," but it's so beautiful that you can just fall into it. It's like the most random noises and the most random sounds, but then you're like, "I like it though." You're like, "Why
yeah.
why do I like this? Why does this feel peaceful?"
Yeah. I've never heard it. I Now it makes me very curious to listen because I feel like there's probably some structure in it, because a lot of times it's like you need the structure and then the little chaotic things are gonna come in and they're gonna be beautiful in the context of the structure, the harmony that's being, provided, whether it's just the rhythm or whether it's like something else, but it is reflecting like the classic structure that you would want around you.
Yeah, I wish there was a way I could kinda, like, play it or share it with you at the same time, but I don't think there's gonna be a way I can do it
Oh,
right
that's okay.
now.
I'll have to look it up. I haven't gone to Burning Man in 10 years. And so I, like, when I say I live under a rock, like I like there are very few like recent like musical artists that I really like have paid much attention to. I don't know how I got into that patterning, but here I am.
It might have been your opera days.
Yeah, it might have been. I
That
also
was your
like just
connection.
kind of very simple reclusive life things as well. I like to, do I like to meditate and be in the woods. So, yeah.
It's a pretty simple life.
Mhm.
And make YouTube videos.
And make YouTube videos, yes.
And make YouTube videos. That's cool. How'd you get into making YouTube videos?
Actually, it was when I was first starting out with, like, the angel work that I do. I was interested in sharing a meditation. There's actually a walk that I would do on a trail in the woods near me, and I would do it, almost every morning, and it would be a very meditative, part of my morning ritual. And every once in a while, I'd just get into this very heightened state while I was out there in nature, and I had, like, this just beautiful feeling, one morning when I was in nature where it felt like everything around me was conscious. The leaves, the trees, the dirt, like, just every little thing out there was just a conscious being, and it was all a miracle, and it was all God, and it felt so incredible. And I decided I wanted to write a guided meditation about that so that I could help other people maybe, like, get to that same state, like, feel that same thing. So I wrote a meditation. It's called my Crystal Heart Meditation. And I just put it up on YouTube because at the time I was observing that other people, who were doing like angel readings and spiritual healing, sessions on people, like they would have guided meditations, but you would have to buy them on their website.
Mm.
And they'd cost however much, and then, you could download it. And I was like, well, nobody knows my name, and like nobody's going to find this meditation, and I won't be able to share it with anybody if I just put it for sale like on a website and that kind of thing. And again, I was just at the very beginning of getting into like doing little healing sessions or readings here and there and that kind of thing. And I thought, well, I'm just going to put it on YouTube. Like more people will be able to enjoy it, and I'll send it to like the people that I've done readings for before, and maybe they'll enjoy it. And I got a pretty good response from it. So I started doing more guided meditations after that. I'd put one out very sporadically, like maybe once a month, like put a meditation up there. I didn't go get into YouTube with any plan of like being a YouTuber or anything like that. No design, no strategy whatsoever. I just sort of randomly put meditations up, and then started doing readings on the full and new moon, just because I was like, I see other people that are doing readings every week, and that would be fun, but I don't think I could commit to doing it every week because that sounds like a lot. So I'll just do it twice a month. And I love thinking about the moon cycles, and the goddess is connected to the moon cycle, and I think that's pretty cool and woo woo. So I'll just throw up readings around the moon cycles and see what happens from there. And yeah, that here I am to this day. I've just been creating things that I guess feel helpful enough to share, and then posting them up. And I've had a great time ever since, getting to connect with people and meet so many new people and work with so many people as a result of it.
That's beautiful because it sounds like it's coming from a place of just pure A, desire to help people, but B, also because you're energized to do it. Because that was something I think whenever I got into podcasting, well, at least I know that a section of it was definitely for validation. I I've talked about this before. I re-listened to my podcast Odyssey number 80, and I could tell that I was talking over myself just to get the validation. And the reason I bring this up is that I knew that even if I got millions of downloads, it wasn't going to bring the validation that I was actually looking for, which brings us back to self-love.
Yeah,
So I
yeah.
find it so I find it very cool in your story how you, at least, you were never, at least it sounds like based on what you're saying, is that you never were doing it for anything more than to help other people find this place of bliss, find this place where dirt sounds like it's talking to you.
Yeah.
So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm human, so definitely get excited if it's like, whoa, there were like a lot of you, like people watched that video. Oh my gosh, like that definitely will excite me and make me feel validated. Like, okay, I guess other people resonate with this too, and that feels good. But like we were talking about, like my theater and art and performing side, I think already took me so down the rabbit hole with looking for validation, from like, getting that like
Mm.
outside attention or whatever it was. That I don't know, I guess I definitely did not originally approach YouTube with that mindset at all. Um and yeah, I think it's a blessing, man. If you would have asked me decades ago, or like growing up, like, what do you want to do with your life? Like, I wouldn't have imagined doing anything like this. This was like something that just didn't exist. I wouldn't have been able to imagine like YouTubing. So it's wonderful.
And
I love doing it.
yeah, and what's really fascinating, and again, I'm relating this back to the conversation I had with Asha, is she talks about momentum, and this also touches on like our whole karmic conversation. Is that you create these predetermined patterns because you're creating momentum in a certain direction. And so whenever it comes back to like the opera situation that you had, you were creating momentum in this opera direction, and so you carried that into this life as well. Like, I'm just going to create that momentum and it's going to keep going. But where it's almost beautiful, like beautifully interwoven, if you will, is that in your YouTube videos, like you're very, what's the right word here? Like you're well, you speak well, you're clearly
Thank
okay in front
you.
of a camera, you're, able to clearly explain ideas. And so it seems to me, now I'm putting this together, that the momentum from those opera days, as tragic as it may have sound, as plagued with, this need for validation, this vulnerability, once you healed those pieces, it carried itself in a way that was like, oh, okay, like your soul has the momentum of knowing how to speak, how to act, if you will. Acting is the wrong word, but how to be in displaying new information to people. And I can see how that thread has carried through into the YouTube content.
Totally. Oh my gosh, yes. I'm such a big believer that if something has purpose in your life, then it's likely that it has a multi-layered purpose. So not only was
Mm,
maybe that a way for me to kind of like harken back to a past life that might have just been playing a small role in what I received from being into performing arts, but yes, I learned skills that I've taken with me to this day. So yeah, I think that that's it's like worthwhile to look at the things that have meaning or that have a strong thread in your life and just say like, I'm going to be grateful because this probably has multiple purposes. It's probably serving me in multiple ways, maybe even some that I'm not aware of yet, but I'll see. So yeah, I agree, and I'm very grateful for all of that. I think that it's very much helped me. A lot of good skills from it
that's
for
cool.
sure.
Have you noticed other places in your life where maybe you emotionally put energy into it for it to not come to fruition, but then something comes up down the later in the life, and it's like, oh, I'm so glad I did that thing whenever I was X years old, because now I can see how it's like helping me.
Yeah, actually, I originally my original goal in doing like spiritual work, spiritual teaching work was I was like, I want to write a book. I'm going to like write a book and who knows, maybe I will. Like maybe that will happen at some point.
Mm.
But I started out with this sense of like I've got to write a book. I've got to get that out there in the world. And I actually wrote one. Like I started writing one and then I kind of just like I can't remember exactly what happened, but I remember going back to the computer that it was on and finding that it had completely disappeared. Like it was not
Oh.
like I don't know if it got deleted or somehow like lost on that computer or like whatever it was, but um I was just like, well, that's okay. I mean, it's odd how unfazed I was by that, like how upset. Like I was very like, okay, probably because there's a part of the back of my mind that believed that it was still there. There was a way to recover it, and I was just like, I'll recover it when it's time to recover it. But I spent a lot of time and energy like writing that and imagining like, yes, the next steps I want to take is like to try to find a way that I'd either self-publish it or publish it or like, get it out there in some way. And I'm glad that I didn't. Like now that I have like years in between then and now, and I can look back at like what I was trying to write, I'm like, I have matured and grown so much. And I am so glad that I didn't put that out there because I feel like when or if it's ever a time maybe for me to do something like that, I'll have something of so much greater value to share. So, yeah,
Mm.
definitely. I think that there are things that'll surprise us when we look back at our lives and say like, yeah, even if there was an element of the unpredictable, the unexpected in how things worked out, I can see how that all fits into place now. I can see how that all worked and why it serves me.
It's really it's really kind of funny that you brought that up, because I have a huge parallel to that right now in my life, where I started another YouTube channel for my jujitsu, where I uploaded like jujitsu rules that I did, and I put commentary over top of them. And it was seeing like like massive growth. Like the videos were taking off, like on just like a view perspective. And it was probably like 3 weeks after I started it, huge traction, momentum's going. Accidentally, I guess, or somehow YouTube deleted the channel. I mean, I tried to delete a
Wow.
different channel, but then YouTube deleted like 3 of my channels, every single one except for, my podcast YouTube channel, and I was just like, "What the hell happened here?" I was dumbfounded, and there was a piece of me
Wow.
that, to your point, like, I was just like, I still have the videos, so I can always upload them later, but I just, like, didn't have the energy anymore, and so it was a very and so I'm seeing that parallel with you writing the book and then this
Yes.
situation with me, and I'm like, I don't even know what to think at this point.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That is wild. And I love that you have such a similar kind of mindset where it's like, I'm not being energized in that direction right now. And
Yeah.
maybe the universe is leading me towards something more important for me to be focusing on. That's awesome. And I have to really hand it to you because I think it takes a lot of work, or a lot of faith, a lot of trust to kind of surrender to the universe to do that trust fall and just say, I'm gonna humble myself of my ego's designs and its intentions of what it wants to control or perfect, and know that there's probably something even better, and I'm just gonna surrender to it and let this all work out in the way that it's supposed to.
Yeah, I appreciate that reflection. And yeah, because I you even touched on something there that I didn't mention, which was that, like, I don't have that energy to go back and upload these videos. Like, I don't know why. Like, I loved making them whenever I made them. I was energized to make them when I did, and, like, now I'm just,
Yeah.
like, sitting here and I probably have, like, 20 videos that I could easily upload, and I know how to make them viral or at least go a little bit better than they did before. But just energetically speaking, I can tell there would be a block there to just actually creating
Yeah.
it. So now I'm just like I actually did have a very similar thought to you where it was like, okay, maybe I shouldn't be putting my energy and I was thinking of this as I was creating them, is like I'm making these jujitsu videos, but I'm also making the podcast videos. Am I spreading out my energy too thin? Because that's been an issue in my past where I've spread
Oh,
my energy too
yeah.
thin into multiple directions and then I'm not giving my energy all to one thing. So this could be the universe saying like, "Hey, no, you need to focus more on doubling down on this podcast and spend less time on the jujitsu or something." I don't know what the whole answer is there, but I feel like there's a
Yeah.
thread there of some sort.
It totally could be. And kind of like going back to like one of the big themes of what we've been talking about, like if that's also matched inside, like if you look inside, you kind of inquired more deeply within and you hear the same answer, like that's how I feel, then it's probably very true.
Mm, I'll have to look into that a little bit more. I have been,
Yeah.
for my YouTube videos, I have been shortchanging the intros. I could be putting more effort into them. But as of recently, I've been in a I wanna, like, catch up because like, right now on my podcast, I'm releasing, like, I think episode 78, but then on YouTube, I'm on episode, like, 8 or 8 no, I'm releasing 88, but I'm on YouTube, it's, like, 80, so I'm trying to just catch up, and so
Ah,
maybe that's
yeah.
not the right energy that I should be putting into it.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
Yeah. If that I'm
maybe.
such a big believer in intuition that if that's like what's coming to your mind, there's a reason and there's value behind it. So, yeah, for sure.
Okay. I appreciate your assistance in, uncovering that piece of wisdom there.
Yes. Thank you for sharing it.
That's cool. Do you have, like, any plans from here? Like, do you I know you do, like, an ascension teaching stuff and all that, but do you have, like, any big ideas or, like, how do you view the future in regards to Sarah Hall?
Yeah, okay, well, we'll see. Right now, I definitely, put a lot of my energy into my, Ascension, coaching program, my Angelic Ascension coaching program. It's where I teach people, um, how to not only communicate with their angels, open up psychic gifts, spiritual gifts, but really heal and grow, deeply on the spiritual path. So that I put out spiritual courses every once in a while. So usually maybe once a year or so I might have a new course that's usually going to be themed around a specific topic area of spiritual healing and growth. So definitely something to that degree going down the road. And yeah, I've been kind of thinking about of a few ideas that have yet to manifest, like maybe doing a retreat at some point. Um,
Mm,
yeah, so we'll see how all that pans out, but, yeah, I'll stay, like we were just saying, humble to the universe, have the best of expectations, put those actions towards it, and then humble myself to the universe and let it also guide me at the same time.
it's beautiful. Yeah, just let it flow. So
Yeah.
then your psychic training, you will, is there something special about you? Or does everybody have these psychic abilities you're talking about?
Everybody has psychic abilities. That's one of my favorite things to teach people. I really do think that it is our divine birthright to be able to communicate with our source. I believe that again we're all one, we're all united and our consciousness is very much united and that we all have the ability to navigate consciousness outside of just the scope of our individual mindset. And it's just a matter of tapping in and awakening those abilities, starting to tune up those abilities. Certainly there are some people that like myself will say, hey, like I've got like kind of maybe a natural sensitivity to that, or have had a few experiences that have spontaneously come in where I feel a little bit more like I've leaned towards that, but that doesn't mean that everybody can't do it. Sort of like some people might come into the world with a natural affinity for being able to sit at a piano and make something that sounds like music out of it, even if they've never studied before. But
Mm,
everybody's probably got the ability, almost everybody's got the ability to learn it if they want to. So I think that there's that potential in every human being.
it's beautiful. It's beautiful. So I'd love for you to, I guess we just kind of plugged your stuff, but I'll have your links below if you want to reference those at will. But I also love giving the space to my guests to talk to the audience at the end of these. So, let people know which links to click for these things down below. And let the audience know if you have any last remarks for them based on this conversation or based on any insight you want to share.
Yeah, yeah. Well, definitely, my YouTube channel would be probably the first place I'd go, since that's where they're going to find a whole library of different guided meditations in case you want to start getting very hands-on and directly playing with some of the things that we've talked about today, whether it's reaching out and feeling the presence of your angels around you or working on a particular topic area of healing or self-love. There's you name it, there's probably a meditation that I have that's about that for you. I also do, of course, my moon readings and different spiritual talks that are on my channel as well. So that can be a great place for just like tons of resources that are out there. And for anybody that's interested in doing deeper coaching work with me or anything like that, you can visit ascensionwithsarah.com. I usually have an enrollment period a couple of times a year. So I'll have another one in probably late this year, early 2024, in case people want to just kind of keep that in mind going forward. And otherwise, big message for everybody in closing is, well, I got to say thank you. Oh my gosh, thank you. If they've gotten this far and they've listened to this, I mean, you guys are awesome, and it's been great to have you along the journey. So thank you for listening. And to me, it seems like the biggest like takeaway from our conversation is, talking about love, like talking about how like that's a power inside of you. And I would say just remember that. Keep that in mind and know that, there's no power or spiritual authority outside of you that's more powerful than you are. Like I really believe that we can all be and should all be, why not, our own direct connection to the divine, to spiritual meaning, to spiritual purpose. So be your own guru, explore all of that, find what really speaks to you and calls to you. And again, thank you. And thank you to you too, Clayton, because it's been great
Beautiful.
talking with you today. You've got the best questions.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it. I mean, yeah, very grateful you came on too, because I know you have a wealth of information to share, and you've definitely expanded my perspective on quite a few things in this short time we've spent together. So I'm very grateful for it. And yeah, there's clearly, I don't know, feels like we're gonna have you back on again in the future. So if you're up for it, we'll make it happen.
That would be awesome. And thank you, you too. I feel like I've looked deeper on a lot of things. And oh my gosh, that Mother Mary question. I can't believe I've never thought to ask about that. So yeah, thank you. This has been enriching, been great.
Hell yeah, I love it. I love it. Yeah, it's I know these conversations are always rewarding for me, and so if in some way the guest finds it rewarding too, then I mean, it's already a success.
Yay.
So cool.
Yes, I love it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. Guys, go check her out. She's got some dope podcast or dope YouTube videos. You have a podcast, but I guess you don't upload to it anymore, right?
Yeah, I haven't uploaded anything. I just looked at it recently. I was like, "Oh, I haven't done an episode since 2021," but it's still up there if you guys wanna look at it. So, there's some interesting angel talks and that kind of thing on it.
Don't force it whenever the energy's ready, right? if we've learned
Yeah,
anything
yeah.
today.
Yeah, yeah, and
Cool.
you can find
Well,
the link, like, in all the
Sarah,
descriptions of my YouTube, so, yeah.
okay, YouTube. Maybe it'll be below. I don't know if you sent me it. Regardless, we're dragging out this ending. Sarah, thank you so much for being here. Guys, go check her out. And if you don't check her out, then we're going to have a talk about it whenever we all see each other in the sixth dimension.